Hello, friend, and welcome to the Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're drifting into the gentle, floating world of clouds. Those soft sculptures of vapor that paint our skies, cradle the sunlight, and carry the hush of the upper air. Not the kind that bring thunder or alert us to change, but the quiet ones, layered, luminous, slow to move. Maybe your day has felt full, or maybe it's simply time to let your thoughts settle. Whatever brought you here, you've arrived at a quiet edge of the evening, a space where the sky can hold your attention just long enough for rest to arrive. How's the sky looking where you are right now? Cloudless, overcast, or gently brushed with cirrus threads? Perhaps there's a bit of silver light behind the curtains. Or maybe it's already night dark, with the clouds hiding stars. Whatever you see, it's perfect for this moment. If these bedtime weather journeys help ease your thoughts, you're always welcome to like or subscribe, but only if it feels calm to do so. So now, let your breath settle, let your body soften, and let's begin. Before clouds ever grace the sky with their softness, before they stretch across the horizon or drift above rooftops like a dream, they begin in silence, invisible, unseen, unfelt. They begin as water vapor, tiny, free-floating molecules of moisture, rising quietly into the air. This vapor doesn't carry weight or color. It moves gently, like a hush, blending with the atmosphere. Carried by winds, warmed by the surface, it wanders unseen through layers of sky. But the sky has a rhythm. As warm air rises, it begins to cool. And as it cools, the invisible begins to gather. Water vapor, once spread thin, finds tiny particles floating in the air, specks of dust, traces of salt, even the quiet residue of volcanic ash or pollen. Around these particles, condensation begins, one drop, then another, not quickly and not with any fanfare. This is where clouds take form, not in sudden arrival, but in accumulation, in patience, in softness. The process is called condensation, and it unfolds in slow motion. As air cools to its dew point, the temperature where moisture begins to condense, cloud droplets begin to form, millions of them. Each one too small to fall, too light to make its way down, but together, visible. Clouds appear not all at once, but as a gentle gathering, a fog in the sky, a whisper of white where blue once stretched uninterrupted. They aren't made of smoke, they aren't cotton or mist. Clouds are collections of water droplets, or, in colder places, tiny crystals of ice. They float, suspended in the sky, because they are small enough to be held aloft by rising air. On humid days, you may notice them appearing just above the trees, flat-bottomed and puffed on top. On cooler mornings, they might drift closer to the ground, wrapping around hills, or hovering like a sigh across the fields. The transformation from vapor to visible cloud is one of the quietest miracles in weather. Nothing crashes, nothing roars. It is the atmosphere doing what it has always done, breathing, rising, cooling, letting go. And so, every cloud you see began in invisibility. It began as unseen vapor, as warmth turned skyward, as a whisper condensed into form. They are not just decorations in the sky. They are stories of warmth rising, of moisture meeting cool air, of the balance between what is held and what is released. The next time you look up and see a cloud drifting past, you might imagine all that came before it, the sunlight that warmed the ground, the water that evaporated from oceans and lakes, the lift of the air, the cooling of the breeze, the dust mote waiting patiently to become the seed of a cloud. There is no sound to this process, no urgency, just a slow arrival, a breath becoming visible. Clouds are not created in storms alone. They don't need thunder to form. They don't require drama. Most clouds are born from calm air, from ordinary heat, from moisture simply rising and meeting a cooler sky. And so, they drift into view, soft-edged, slow-moving, suspended stories written in vapor. They remind us that even what begins unseen can one day catch the light. Look upward, and you may notice that clouds do not all gather at the same height. Some drift low, near rooftops and treetops, almost close enough to reach. Others hover far above, thin and distant, barely more than wisps against the blue. The sky holds layers, and clouds find their place within them, like dancers on different stages, each with its own tempo, its own softness, its own story. The atmosphere is not one simple space. It is layered, gently, almost invisibly. These layers are shaped by temperature, pressure, and the motion of air. And within them, clouds form where conditions are just right. Not too dry, not too warm, not too still. The lowest clouds, called low-level clouds, often form below 6,500 feet. These are the clouds we notice most often, stratus that stretch like grey veils, or cumulus that puff like floating islands. They are shaped by the warmth of the Earth's surface and the rising moisture close to the ground. As we rise higher into the atmosphere, we reach the mid-level clouds, between 6,500 and 20,000 feet. Here, altocumulus and altostratus take form. They are quieter in their appearance, often more diffused, more layered, holding the softness of changing weather. These clouds may look like gentle ripples across the sky, or pale blankets that filter the sunlight into a silvery glow. Still higher, above 20,000 feet, the high-level clouds reside. The air here is colder, thinner, more still. And the clouds that drift at this height, cirrus, cirrostratus, cirrocumulus, are made of ice, not water. They stretch in fine threads and glimmer faintly, catching light in ways the lower clouds cannot. These high clouds are sometimes barely visible. You may see them at sunset, glowing softly in pastel colors, or at dawn when the first light finds them before it touches the earth. They do not tower or darken the sky. Instead, they whisper the presence of distant moisture, of jet stream movement, of delicate ice suspended in quiet balance. The layering of clouds is not rigid. It shifts gently with the weather. A day may begin with high cirrus clouds streaking the sky, followed by altostratus softening the light, and then a quiet descent of low stratus bringing mist or drizzle. The sky tells its own story in layers, stacked not vertically like boxes, but flowing like currents in an unseen ocean. Pilots know these layers well. Meteorologists study them closely. But for those simply lying on a quiet hillside, watching the sky, all that's needed is observation and stillness. Each cloud layer speaks of what the atmosphere holds in that moment, its moisture, its motion, its temperament. When you look up at clouds drifting at different levels, you're witnessing a kind of orchestration. The earth warming below, the air cooling above, the sun pulling vapor upward, the wind shaping patterns, and all of it without sound. So tonight, if your window shows just a patch of sky, see if you can notice the depth. One layer might be moving slowly west, another drifting east above it. The clouds don't compete. They simply flow, each in its place, each part of the sky's quiet rhythm. A sky with many layers doesn't mean confusion, it means balance. And in this layered sky, clouds continue their soft, silent work, forming, floating, and fading, across levels as delicate as breath. Among the many types of clouds, Few are as familiar or comforting as cumulus. They're the ones children imagine as sheep or castles or drifting balloons. Puffy, gentle, bright white against a blue afternoon. But beneath their softness lies a quiet story of warmth, motion, and upward lift. Cumulus clouds begin at the surface, where warmth gathers. The sun heats the earth, and the earth warms the air just above it. As this air warms, it becomes lighter, and like a balloon set free, it begins to rise. This is convection, gentle, natural, and ever-present. As the warm air rises, it carries moisture with it. But higher up, the air is cooler, and eventually, the rising air cools enough for the water vapor it carries to begin condensing. Around tiny particles, droplets form, and suddenly, what was once invisible vapor becomes a visible cloud. The flat bottom of a cumulus cloud marks the point where this condensation begins. It often appears smooth and even, like a gentle shelf in the sky. But above that flat base, the cloud puffs upward, shaped by the motion of the rising air within it. The top bubbles and folds, like steam drifting upward from a warm cup of tea. Cumulus clouds are sometimes called fair weather clouds because they often appear during calm, sunny afternoons. They are rarely associated with storms. Instead, they drift slowly, shaped by sunlight and breeze, sculpted by quiet thermals that lift and twist them. Each cumulus cloud is a small expression of the warmth below. They tend to form in clusters, like a floating archipelago, each cloud its own soft island in a sea of sky. From the ground, they may look still, but they are always in motion, rising, reforming, fading. When light hits them just right, they glow around the edges, casting soft shadows on the ground below. Their presence tells us the atmosphere is moving, gently breathing, that the sun is doing its quiet work, pulling warmth from the surface and letting it return skyward. On some days, if the surface heating continues, cumulus clouds may grow taller. They may stretch, develop layers, or even evolve into more towering forms. But in their simplest state, they remain rounded, peaceful, and reflective of calm, upward motion. They do not rush, they do not shout. Cumulus clouds are the poetry of a warm day, the slow exhale of the earth made visible. And so, the next time you lie back and gaze upward, watch these clouds float by. Let their soft shapes guide your breath. Let their movement slow your thoughts. Imagine the warmth that lifted them, and the quiet height where they now rest. They are the sky's version of a lullaby, buoyant, bright, and gently swaying. High above the familiar blue, where the air grows thin and cold, a different kind of cloud drifts silently. These are not the billowy, cotton-like clouds of midday. Cirrus clouds are delicate, thread-like, often barely there. They stretch across the sky like quiet brushstrokes or long strands of silk unraveling in the upper air. Cirrus clouds form higher than most others, typically above 20,000 feet. At these heights, the air is much colder, and moisture doesn't condense into water droplets as it does lower down. Instead, it crystallizes into tiny, floating ice. Each cirrus cloud is made of countless frozen crystals, suspended in air that's thinner than breath and colder than any winter we know from the ground. You won't find heavy shadows beneath cirrus. They don't block sunlight, not really. They filter it, refract it. Sometimes, when the sun is at the right angle, you may notice a halo, a faint circle of light wrapping gently around the sun or moon. That's the cirrus, bending the light softly through its icy frame. These clouds often arrive ahead of change, but they themselves are not stormy. They are messengers, not makers. When a cirrus veil appears, it may be telling of distant moisture approaching, moisture so high and so far that it won't reach the ground for a day or more. Meteorologists watch for cirrus as part of the sky's subtle language. To the casual observer, cirrus may look like wisps, sometimes curved, sometimes straight, often streaked out in long, thin filaments. From the ground, they seem still, but at those heights, powerful upper-level winds shape them constantly, combing them into long feathers or sweeping arcs. Pilots flying above these clouds often see them as underlayers, wisps trailing beneath the wings, brushing against nothing. But from below, cirrus are the highest notes of the atmosphere's melody, soft, barely spoken, and easily missed unless you're watching with quiet eyes. Cirrus can also form from the tops of large storms, when rising air punches high into the stratosphere and flattens out. Even then, the result is not frightening. It's like a sigh at the peak of motion, a thin, stretched-out echo of the storm's upward breath. Despite their icy makeup, cirrus clouds don't feel cold to the eye. They seem peaceful, pale, almost fragile. Their brightness comes not from weight, but from dispersion, from light scattering softly across millions of ice crystals. Sometimes, at sunset, these clouds catch the last light of day long after the earth below has dimmed. They glow in pastel pinks, lavender hues, and pale orange, a final soft radiance before night settles in. If you find yourself gazing up at cirrus clouds, let your thoughts stretch as they do, long and unhurried. Imagine the cold air holding them aloft. Picture the path each ice crystal has taken, how high it rose before it could settle into this quiet shape. Cirrus clouds don't build or burst. They don't announce themselves. They arrive in silence. They pass in stillness. And in their drifting presence, they remind us that even the uppermost layers of the sky hold something soft. The atmosphere is not just wind and temperature, it's also grace. And cirrus clouds are its most delicate signature, etched in ice, drawn across the sky with the lightest hand. Sometimes the sky doesn't need to move. It doesn't need to swirl or build or shimmer. It simply settles, low, wide, still. That's when stratus clouds arrive, not as towers or tufts, but as a soft grey sheet that wraps the world in hush. Stratus clouds form close to the ground, usually below 6,500 feet. They often stretch across the sky in a continuous, unbroken layer, like fog that chose to hover just above the rooftops. These clouds don't gather in dramatic piles. They don't reveal bright edges. They simply cover, gently and completely. Their formation begins when moist air cools slowly over a broad area. There's no burst of upward motion, no vigorous convection, just quiet lifting. Sometimes this happens overnight, as the ground cools and allows air just above it to reach its dew point. Other times, stratus forms along a gentle front, where cool air slips beneath warmer air and nudges it upward with the care of a slow tide. You might wake to stratus and not notice them at first. They don't demand attention. The sky is simply greyer, softer. The sunlight feels diffused, filtered through something fine and weightless. Unlike cumulus or cirrus clouds, stratus don't reveal their shapes. There are no contours to follow. Instead, they invite stillness, a kind of visual quiet. Even the light beneath them changes. It becomes cool, bluish, subdued. The world looks just a little more peaceful under a stratus ceiling. When stratus clouds touch the ground, we call it fog. But when they hover just above, they retain their name. It's the same structure, tiny water droplets suspended in the air, spread wide, held softly in suspension. Stratus clouds rarely bring storms, but they may release a light drizzle or a mist that clings to windows and coats branches. It's not harsh, it's not hurried, just a slow, fine precipitation that seems to settle rather than fall. On days when stratus fills the sky, the horizon disappears, shadows soften, edges blur. The world feels a little more wrapped, as if tucked beneath something protective. These clouds are often misunderstood as dull or gloomy, but in truth, they are among the most peaceful. They invite introspection. A walk beneath a stratus sky feels quieter. Thoughts arrive more gently. Time seems to slow. Stratus clouds remind us that the sky doesn't always have to dazzle. Sometimes its beauty lies in stillness, in simplicity, in the even tone of a day where nothing pushes or pulls. For meteorologists, stratus may indicate stable air, a lack of vertical motion, a pause in weather's more dramatic expressions. But for those seeking rest, these clouds offer something else, a sense of calm. So, if today is blanketed in grey, there's no need to chase the sun. Let the sky be soft. Let it mute the light. Let it slow the pace of everything. Stratus clouds aren't here to stir. They're here to quiet, to cover, to comfort. And sometimes, the gentlest thing a sky can do is simply stay. Sometimes, rain doesn't arrive with thunder. It doesn't need to fall in bursts or come with wind. It can simply begin, softly, steadily, as if the sky itself has decided to exhale. And when it does, nimbostratus clouds are often to thank. These are the quiet rain-bringers of the sky. They don't billow or tower. They don't shimmer like high cirrus or puff like cumulus. Nimbostratus clouds stretch wide, an unbroken sheet of gentle grey. When stratus clouds thicken and moisture in the atmosphere grows heavy but calm, nimbostratus clouds take form. Their name gives us clues. Nimbus means rain, and stratus means stretched out. Together, they describe a cloud that covers the sky in a smooth, soft layer, releasing rain that doesn't rush. This rain often starts without drama. A cool stillness settles in. Light begins to dim, not sharply, but as if passed through a silk curtain. Then, drop by drop, the drizzle begins, fine, steady, and comforting. Not a downpour, not a storm, just a sustained rainfall that continues for hours, sometimes longer. Nimbostratus clouds usually form at mid to low altitudes, sometimes as low as 2,000 feet. Unlike their fair weather cousins, they don't leave much room for sunlight. But their presence isn't gloomy, it's grounding, a stratus blanket that hydrates the earth, nourishes roots, and hushes the pace of the day. They often arrive with warm fronts, where moist, warmer air slides gently over cooler air. There's no sharp clash, just a quiet transition that encourages slow, expansive lifting. This lifting helps moisture condense across wide areas of sky, forming the broad cloud decks of nimbostratus. If you've ever watched raindrops trail softly down a window, if you've walked under a wide umbrella and heard the faint patter on fabric, chances are you were beneath a nimbostratus sky. Pilots see these clouds as signs of persistence. Forecasters associate them with long-lasting precipitation. But for those on the ground, they're often part of the coziest days, ones spent inside, warm and still, while the sky weeps gently. There are no harsh shadows when nimbostratus arrives, no sharp contrasts, just diffuse, dim light and soft grey tones that make everything feel closer, quieter, more contained. And the rain they offer isn't just sound, it's a rhythm, a pulse, a background hush that seems to lull both cities and countrysides into a slower heartbeat. So, the next time you see a grey ceiling overhead and the air begins to mist and bead, know that you're under the care of a nimbostratus cloud, one that asks nothing of you but stillness. A sky like this doesn't roar. It whispers. It comforts. It gives the gift of rain that lingers, not to disrupt, but to soothe. There's a moment just after sunrise or before sunset when the sky looks quilted, stitched with small tufts of cloud, like cotton spread across a canvas of colour. These are altocumulus clouds, modest in height, light in texture, and quietly beautiful. Altocumulus clouds live in the middle levels of the sky, higher than low-lying stratus, but not as distant as icy cirrus. They typically form between 6,500 and 20,000 feet above the Earth. From the ground, they appear in patches or rows, often arranged like fish scales or the ripples of sand shaped by water. This pattern is sometimes called a mackerel sky. Each cloudlet is small, rounded, and slightly puffed, tiny islands of moisture held aloft by gentle movement in the atmosphere. Their formation often begins when a layer of moist air is lifted slowly and evenly, cooling just enough to condense into droplets. Unlike towering clouds that rise dramatically, altocumulus clouds tend to spread horizontally, layering across the sky like scattered petals. They are common in the morning hours and may signal subtle changes in weather. But they are not ominous, not loud, just quietly present, offering texture to an otherwise smooth sky. Light plays gently with altocumulus. When the sun is low, these clouds catch it from the side, glowing golden, pink, or peach. They don't block light, they reflect it in gentle glimmers. At midday, they shift to white or pale grey, forming soft shadows that drift with the wind. They rarely bring rain on their own, but their presence can hint at what's coming. In humid conditions, they may suggest moisture building. In colder air, they may simply decorate the sky without consequence. Like many clouds, altocumulus speaks in subtlety. For those watching from below, these clouds offer a kind of meditative rhythm. Their repetition feels soothing. Their motion is slight but constant. And because they often appear in clusters, they invite the eye to wander, not in search of meaning, but in appreciation of pattern. You might see them on a warm summer morning, or perhaps on a winter day, catching weak sunlight before it fades. They arrive without fanfare and leave without notice. But in their quiet time above, they transform the sky into something gently patterned, quietly stirred. If you ever find yourself beneath an altocumulus sky, pause. Let your gaze travel from one tuft to the next. Notice how each shape is similar but never the same. Let the rhythm of their spacing calm you. Let the sky's texture become your own. Soft, spaced, and still. They are mid-level clouds, midway in height, midway in energy, but never halfway in beauty. High above mountain peaks and wind-sculpted ridges, sometimes the sky reveals shapes that seem too precise to be natural. Stacked, smooth, and curved like shallow bowls or delicate flying saucers, lenticular clouds appear almost sculpted, crafted not by chance, but by quiet, invisible forces at work. These clouds form in a very specific way. When stable, moist air flows over a mountain range or elevated terrain, it can begin to ripple, like wind streaming over a rock in a river. As the air rises along these invisible waves, it cools. If the moisture in the air reaches its dew point at the crest of the wave, condensation occurs and a cloud forms. Then, as the air descends again, it warms and the cloud evaporates. What's remarkable is that the air is still moving, but the cloud stays in place. It forms at the crest of the wave and disappears at the trough. So while air flows through it constantly, the lenticular cloud itself seems still, hovering motionless, quietly poised in the sky. They're called lenticular because of their lens-like shape. Some are singular and isolated. Others stack, forming what appear to be layered discs, like a gentle pile of silver plates resting just above the horizon. From the ground, these clouds can look surreal. Pilots pay attention to them, as they're often signs of turbulence. But from a distance, their presence feels serene, balanced, perfectly placed. Lenticular clouds aren't limited to mountains. They can appear in hilly terrain or even over flat ground, if the wind conditions are just right and atmospheric waves are triggered. But they're most famously seen near ranges like the Rockies, the Andes, or Mount Fuji, standing quietly above the peaks like celestial ornaments. They often appear at sunrise or sunset, catching light in a way that feels otherworldly. Their smooth surfaces glow in gold, lavender, and rose, sometimes with inner shadows that make them look almost three-dimensional. They can seem like something hovering just beyond explanation. But there's no mystery to their creation, only the beauty of nature's physics expressed through shape and stillness. Though they may resemble UFOs or man-made objects, lenticular clouds are entirely natural. They are a collaboration between wind, moisture, and topography. And once you understand their formation, they feel even more magical, not because they defy nature, but because they reveal it with such precision. Their edges are often sharply defined, unlike the frayed or diffused edges of other clouds, and their surfaces don't bubble or ripple. They hold their form, steady and composed, as long as the wave of air beneath them remains undisturbed. On calm days near the mountains, they may hang for hours. On windier days, they may come and go within moments. Either way, their presence feels intentional, a soft sculpture placed in the sky just long enough to be noticed. If you ever see one, take a moment to pause. Let your eyes rest on its smooth contours. Let your thoughts slow to match its stillness. The world below may be in motion, but that cloud, that lenticular form, reminds us that even within flow, there can be perfect rest. Some clouds live high in the sky, some drift across hilltops, and some come close enough to touch. That's what fog is, a cloud that has settled down to the ground, wrapping the world in softness, one breath at a time. Fog begins just like any other cloud. Moisture in the air cools and condenses, but unlike lofty clouds that form far above, fog develops near the surface, where cool air and high humidity meet in stillness. No need for mountains or strong winds, just the right balance of quiet, calm air and enough moisture. It often arrives in the early hours, just before dawn. The air has cooled overnight, the ground has released its warmth, and as temperatures drop closer to the dew point, the air can no longer hold all its invisible vapor. So the vapor turns visible, clinging to the air in a fine suspension of droplets. And suddenly, the familiar becomes cloaked in something quieter. You might wake to fog and find the trees outside gently faded. Streetlights become halos, sounds become softer, muted by the mist, as if the world itself has lowered its volume. Your footsteps feel cushioned. Even your breath seems to join the fog around you. There are different types of fog. Radiation fog, which forms overnight when the ground cools rapidly. Advection fog, when warm, moist air moves over cooler ground or water. And valley fog, which settles into low places like a blanket that's found its fold. But the feeling of fog is universal. It invites stillness, slowness, a gentle hush. Pilots and drivers may treat it with caution, but for those simply walking or watching, fog offers a moment of pause. It blurs the line between what's near and far. It smooths the outlines of buildings, trees, and hills. What was sharp becomes soft. What was busy becomes calm. In a way, fog gives us permission to move slowly. There's no rush when the world is hidden in softness. Visibility narrows, and so we focus on what's close. A branch, a puddle, the sound of a nearby bird. And as the sun rises, the fog begins to lift, not in a hurry, but gradually. It thins, like breath fading on a mirror. Shapes return, edges sharpen, and what was veiled becomes visible again, refreshed. Fog doesn't change what's beneath it. It simply softens the view. It wraps the world, not to hide it, but to ask us to see it differently, gently, quietly. So the next time fog visits your morning, let it guide your pace. Let it whisper you into the day. Let it be a cloud you walk through, one step at a time. When we look up at the sky and see clouds drifting peacefully above us, they seem impossibly light, like puffs of nothing, floating without effort. But in truth, clouds carry weight. A single, ordinary cumulus cloud can hold over 1 million pounds of water, and yet it floats. How is that possible? It begins with the droplets themselves. Clouds are made of tiny particles, water droplets or ice crystals so small that they remain suspended in air. Each droplet is incredibly light, and in a single cubic meter of cloud, there may be hundreds of thousands of them. Alone, one droplet means little, but together, across miles of sky, their collective mass becomes something remarkable. A cumulus cloud might stretch 1/2 mile across and 1/2 mile high. Within that volume, millions upon millions of droplets reside. If all their weight were gathered into a single container, it would be heavier than several jumbo jets. Yet, in the sky, that cloud moves softly, held up not by magic, but by physics. Warm air rising from the surface provides lift. As long as the upward motion of air is strong enough to counter the slow falling tendency of the droplets, the cloud remains suspended. It's a quiet balancing act between gravity and buoyancy. Even rain begins with this balance. Only when droplets grow large enough to overcome the upward motion, either by colliding and merging or by cooling and condensing further, do they begin to fall as precipitation. It's important to remember that clouds aren't solid. They are diffuse, spread out. Their mass is distributed widely, like mist in a cathedral. This is why they float and why they don't collapse under their own weight. They move with air currents, shaped by wind, pressure, and temperature. Their weight is real, but so is the air beneath them, rising, lifting, holding. So, when you look up at a towering cumulus or a quiet blanket of stratus, know that you are witnessing something both light and heavy. Something delicate, yet massive. A sky-born contradiction that drifts without falling. Clouds remind us that weight does not always mean burden, that heaviness can float, that presence can be quiet, and perhaps, in a way, they teach us the same. Even clouds have a life, not a dramatic one, not a rush from birth to end, but a soft, shifting cycle, gentle as breath, unfolding in the open sky. It all begins with invisible water vapor. Heat from the sun warms lakes, rivers, oceans, and even soil, causing moisture to rise. This vapor, weightless and unseen, drifts upward into cooler air. If the conditions are right, if the temperature drops just enough, and there are tiny particles in the air for water to cling to, then condensation begins, and slowly, silently, a cloud forms. At first, it's subtle, just a faint brush of white against the blue. But as more vapor rises and condenses, the cloud begins to take shape. It may grow taller, wider, or thicker, depending on the air's movement. Some clouds bubble upward in soft thermals. Others spread in calm, horizontal layers. No two are quite the same, yet all are shaped by the balance between warmth, moisture, and wind. A cloud's life depends on the rhythm of rising and sinking air. If warm air keeps lifting, the cloud is nourished. It grows, floats, evolves. If the lift slows or cools too much, the droplets begin to evaporate, and the cloud slowly fades. Clouds don't disappear in a blink. They soften first. Edges fray. Color fades. A puffy cumulus may shrink until it's a ghost of vapor. A blanket of stratus may thin until the sky peeks through. The droplets return to vapor, slipping back into invisibility. And so, a cloud ends much as it began, quietly, invisibly, without a sound. This cycle can happen in minutes or stretch across hours. Some clouds live brief, flickering lives in the heat of a summer day. Others linger through long afternoons, shading landscapes and slowly shifting until dusk. In mountainous regions or along coastal breezes, clouds may even renew themselves again and again, fed by the rhythms of terrain and temperature. Even rain is part of this life. If droplets within the cloud grow large enough, by colliding or collecting, they may fall to the ground as precipitation. The cloud gives something back, a release, a gentle return. But even then, not all clouds rain. Some live full, quiet lives aloft, drifting from one patch of sky to another, never needing to weep. From birth in vapor to the stillness of evaporation, a cloud's journey is a story of softness and flow. It's not dramatic, it's not harsh. It's a slow dance between sky and earth, visibility and vapor. And perhaps that's why clouds feel so comforting. They remind us that change can be slow, that endings don't need to be sudden, that a presence can come and go gently, with grace. The next time you watch a cloud drift by, you might picture its beginning and its fading. You're seeing not just a shape, but a quiet process, a cycle of water and warmth, of lifting and letting go. Even in something as light as a cloud, there's a story of life. Not in flashes, not in noise, just in movement and mist, and the hush of air becoming visible. At first glance, clouds seem simple, just white against blue. But stay a little while, and you'll see them shift. Pale golds, gentle pinks, even shades of grey and violet. Clouds are never just one colour. They change constantly, reflecting and scattering light in ways that feel quiet, even magical. The colour of a cloud depends on the light that reaches it, and the path that light takes to get there. During the day, when the sun is high, its rays pass through less atmosphere. The light is direct, full spectrum, and mostly white. Clouds appear bright and soft because they scatter all wavelengths of sunlight evenly. But as the sun lowers in the sky, light must travel farther through the atmosphere to reach us. Along the way, shorter wavelengths, like blue and violet, are scattered out, leaving behind the warmer tones, reds, oranges, and golds. These colours bathe the clouds, especially their tops and edges, turning them into soft skies of peach and rose. Clouds near the horizon catch this filtered light most intensely. Thin clouds high above often glow first, lit from beneath in pale fire, while thicker clouds reflect deeper, muted tones. Even dark clouds at sunset can hold a rim of glowing colour, like embers hidden in ash. Colour also shifts depending on the cloud's thickness. Thin clouds, like cirrus, may shine with translucent pinks. Thick clouds, like cumulonimbus, absorb more light, appearing greyer, with soft, dramatic shading. Weather plays a role too. Before rain, clouds may turn bluish-grey as moisture builds. Afterward, they may brighten, washed clean by the sky. Sometimes, you'll notice a greenish tint in towering storm clouds, caused by sunlight filtering through dense moisture and hail. But even that hue is subtle, never startling. Light at sunrise is softer, filtered through morning mist and low-angle beams. It paints clouds with quieter versions of the sunset palette, a prelude rather than a finale. And then there are moonlit clouds. At night, clouds can glow pale silver, reflecting the moon's calm light. They may even take on a bluish tone or blend into darkness, soft and nearly invisible. All of this happens slowly, quietly. The sky is never rushed in its changes. You may not notice the moment the white turns gold, or when the pink fades to grey. It unfolds with the rhythm of breathing. So, if you ever find yourself beneath a colourful sky, pause. Let the colours move through you as they move across the clouds. Let your thoughts scatter like light, softly, gently, with no urgency. Clouds remind us that change can be beautiful, that even when light fades, it does so with grace. Their colours aren't fixed. They are expressions of light, time, and perspective. And perhaps that's why we find such comfort in watching them shift, because they echo something in us, the quiet beauty of soft transitions. There's something gentle and mesmerizing about the way sunlight touches the edges of clouds. It doesn't rush. It doesn't demand attention. It simply arrives, tracing the soft contours of vapor with light, like a brush dipped in gold. During certain times of day, particularly at sunrise and sunset, the angle of the sun becomes just right. Instead of overhead light, we have side light, long, low beams that skim the earth and strike the cloud from below or beside. These angles reveal something special, not just the shape of the cloud, but its depth, its texture, its secret architecture. Light grazes the outer boundary of the cloud and illuminates the edges first. That's why the core may remain a muted grey or cool white, while the perimeter glows in warm hues: peach, apricot, soft gold, even blush pink. These edges seem to shimmer, not with sparkle, but with a quiet inner light. This phenomenon is most visible in cumulus or cumulonimbus clouds. Their well-defined structures provide the perfect surfaces for sunlight to sculpt. The rounded tops and billowing flanks become outlined in glowing brilliance, especially in the golden hours near dawn or dusk. Thin clouds, like cirrus, catch the light differently. Their edges are finer, more like threads than borders. And yet, even these are painted by the sun's slow touch, sometimes so subtly that it feels like the sky is exhaling colour rather than displaying it. The softness of these illuminated edges comes from scattering. As light passes through air and particles, it bends and diffuses. The shortest wavelengths, blue and violet, scatter most easily, which is why midday skies appear blue. But during sunrise and sunset, those colours are filtered out, and the longer, warmer tones remain. These are the ones that dance across cloud edges: red, orange, and gold. Sometimes, if moisture in the air is just right, you may even see a silver lining, literally. This occurs when a cloud is backlit by the sun and light leaks around the cloud's boundary, creating a luminous rim. It's not a myth. It's a phenomenon born from contrast. Light wrapping gently around shadow, And sometimes, within that edge, you'll see soft rays peeking through breaks in the clouds. These are called crepuscular rays, and they fan outward like sunbeams drawn in slow motion. They aren't solid lines of light. They're shadows and glow, interplaying, reminding us that illumination often emerges most beautifully at the margins. Even when the sky is overcast, there may be a subtle highlight where one layer of cloud overlaps another. The edge glows just faintly, enough to be noticed if you pause, enough to turn a quiet sky into a painted one. These painted edges never last long. They shift with the moving sun, the drifting clouds, the ever-changing angles of the day. But perhaps that's what makes them feel so precious. Fleeting beauty, caught only by those who happen to be watching. If you see them tomorrow, let your eyes rest there. Let the glow soothe you. Let it remind you that even in something as soft and vaporous as a cloud, there are outlines of light, quiet revelations drawn by the sun. Clouds do not glow by themselves, but they carry the sun's whisper across their edges, and in doing so, they show us how light and softness can live side by side. Most clouds retreat into shadow after the sun slips below the horizon, but some continue to shine, faintly, softly, as if holding onto the last whispers of daylight. These are the clouds that glow at night, quiet messengers of twilight, moonlight, and the secret stillness of the upper sky. One of the most ethereal of these is the noctilucent cloud, a high-altitude formation that appears just after sunset or before sunrise, glowing pale blue or silver against a darkening sky. The name means night shining, and they live where almost no other clouds can survive, in the mesosphere, more than 50 miles above the ground. At that height, the air is extremely cold and thin. Yet, in the summer months, tiny ice crystals form, and when the sun dips below the horizon, its light can still reach these upper clouds, illuminating them from below, even while the rest of the world is dark. They shimmer like ghost clouds, delicate and far away, so rare, so silent. Another kind of nighttime glow comes from moonlit clouds. On nights when the moon is full or nearly full, its soft light reflects off low or mid-level clouds. You might notice them glowing faintly, pale grey or even silvery white. Not enough to cast shadows, but enough to brighten the sky. Unlike the golden warmth of the sun, moonlight carries a cooler tone. Clouds lit by the moon feel gentle, even a bit mysterious. They're often surrounded by halos, soft rings of light caused by the moon's glow scattering through high, icy cirrus clouds. These halos are subtle. They don't flash or demand attention, but they are there, waiting to be noticed. Auroras, though not clouds, can sometimes give the illusion of glowing sky shapes. In polar regions, their shifting lights may reflect off clouds or create a layered effect that looks like the atmosphere itself is glowing from within. Even city lights, distant and diffused, can give clouds a faint glow on overcast nights. The effect is different, more earthly than celestial, but still gentle, still quiet. A reminder that light can drift upward, bouncing softly through the atmosphere and giving shape to clouds long after the sky has gone dark. There is no thunder here, no storm, just light, filtered, refracted, reflected, turning clouds into quiet lanterns. Night-glowing clouds invite pause. They appear when we least expect it, often when we're ready to close the day. Their glow is never harsh. It's like the sky exhaling, holding a last glimmer of day, or cradling the moon's reflection just long enough for someone to notice. If you ever see one, especially a noctilucent cloud, rare and haunting, take a breath. Let its silvery presence remind you that the sky never fully sleeps. It holds memories of sunlight even after the sun is gone. Some clouds don't disappear into the night. They carry light a little longer, just enough to guide you into dreams. On mornings touched by fog, the world grows quieter. The sharp sounds of everyday life, traffic, voices, footsteps, seem to vanish into the mist. The air feels thicker, not with weight, but with hush. And the silence is not empty. It's padded, softened, like the world has been gently muffled. This is one of fog's quiet gifts. It doesn't only change how we see the world, it also changes how we hear it. Fog is made of tiny water droplets suspended in air. These droplets scatter sound waves. Instead of letting sound travel directly and sharply, fog spreads it out, dulls its edges and shortens its reach. Echoes fade more quickly. Distant noises seem to disappear altogether. The result is a kind of cocoon, an acoustic blanket that wraps your surroundings in calm. This effect is especially noticeable in the early morning, when fog is at its thickest. A dog barking across the street may sound like it's just a whisper away. A passing car becomes a faint sigh. The world draws closer, yet becomes more still. In forests, fog transforms birdsong into something delicate. In cities, it turns the urban rhythm into a softened murmur. Even footsteps on pavement seem quieter, as if the ground is listening. The science behind this is gentle too. In clear air, sound travels in straight lines, bouncing off surfaces with clarity. But in fog, sound waves encounter countless droplets. They scatter, dispersed in many directions. High-frequency sounds are affected more than low ones. So sharp tones fade, and what remains is the low, velvety undercurrent of ambient noise. Pilots and mariners have long known this. In heavy fog, signals and voices don't carry the same. But for the rest of us, this softening of sound feels like a lullaby, a moment when the world itself lowers its voice. It's not silence, it's something better, gentle quiet, a space to breathe, a chance to listen inward. If you ever find yourself in a foggy moment, pause, close your eyes, let the softened world wrap around you, let the quiet stretch. Let it remind you that not all noise needs to be heard, and not all clarity needs to be sharp. Fog doesn't just hide things, it soothes them. It gives space for softness to exist. And in that hush, you might just find peace. There are days when the sky holds unusual shapes, ones that seem to stretch downward rather than rise up. If you've ever looked up after a storm and seen soft, pouch-like patterns hanging beneath the clouds, you've seen mammatus clouds. Their name comes from the Latin word mamma, meaning udder or breast, describing the rounded, pendulous look of these sky formations. Despite their connection to dramatic weather, mammatus clouds themselves are gentle in appearance. Suspended beneath the anvil of a storm cloud or an expansive layer of altostratus, they resemble softly gathered fabric or quilted cushions. They're quiet to watch, still, unfolding in clusters or rows, hanging like the sky has exhaled downward. Mammatus clouds form when cooler air sinks from a parent cloud into warmer air below. It's a subtle reversal. Most clouds are formed by rising air, but mammatus are shaped by sinking motion. This downward ripple creates the rounded lobes, each one a pouch of cloud slowly descending and dissolving. They're most commonly seen after the main thunderstorm has passed, especially in the fading light of late afternoon. The storm has moved on, but the sky leaves behind these soft impressions, like fingerprints in vapor. Despite their dramatic appearance, mammatus clouds do not produce severe weather. They aren't dangerous. They don't bring wind or rain. In fact, they're often signs that the turbulent part of the storm is over. What remains is a kind of atmospheric afterthought, gentle undulations shaped by cooling and calm. When illuminated by a setting sun, mammatus clouds take on hues of gold, rose, or even lavender. Light pools inside each pouch, outlining their shape like hanging lanterns. The effect is quietly mesmerizing, a textured ceiling of the sky, formed from moisture and motion. From the ground, it's tempting to think of them as strange or rare. But mammatus clouds are more common than we think, especially near the edges of large cumulonimbus formations. Pilots see them from above, stretched out beneath the cloud base like a pattern pressed into fabric. And for meteorologists, their presence speaks to the life cycle of a storm, hinting that the air is beginning to stabilize. There's no sound as they form, no rush, just slow descent and soft definition. They appear, hold their shape, then gradually fade, melting into the rest of the sky as the light dims. So, if you ever find yourself beneath a mammatus sky, pause. Let the unusual beauty settle into your breath. Let the world feel upside down for a moment, with clouds reaching toward the earth instead of away from it. In a sky that usually stretches upward, mammatus clouds are a reminder that not everything needs to rise to be beautiful. Sometimes, the most peaceful patterns descend, and in their quiet, rounded shapes, the atmosphere leaves behind a lullaby, gentle, slow, and softly sculpted. Every so often, when sunlight and moisture align just right, the sky reveals one of its most tender surprises, a rainbow, not drawn with crayons or paint, but created through physics, light, and clouded air. Rainbows feel like magic, but they are born from familiar friends, clouds, droplets, and sun. The story begins with sunlight, which appears white to our eyes, but is made of many colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. These colors travel together until something bends them apart. That something is usually a droplet of water. After a rain shower, or near the misty edges of a cloud, millions of droplets may hang suspended in the air. When sunlight enters a droplet, it bends, a process called refraction. Inside the droplet, light bounces off the inner surface, then exits again, bending once more as it leaves. This journey separates the colors, spreading them into an arc of delicate hues. Each droplet contributes only one color to your eye, depending on your angle. But with millions of droplets working together, a rainbow appears. A wide band of color, perfectly curved, glowing softly in the sky. Clouds play an essential role. Without them, there is no mist to catch the light. Sometimes, you'll see rainbows forming on the very edge of a retreating cloudburst. Sun behind you, moisture ahead, the perfect stage set. Rainbows don't only appear in storms. They can form in garden sprinklers, waterfalls, or fog banks. Fog bows, rainbows made from very fine droplets, are paler and more ghost-like, often white or faintly tinted. They're rare, quiet cousins of the rainbow, seen in the misty morning light or low clouds over hills and oceans. From airplanes, pilots sometimes see glories, circular rainbows that surround the aircraft's shadow on the clouds below. These are not illusions. They are the atmosphere at play with light and perspective. Even in winter, when the sun reflects off ice crystals in high cirrus clouds, halos and arcs may form, rainbows of a different kind, shaped not by rain, but by frozen light. Rainbows require very specific conditions. That's why they always feel like a gift. You cannot force them. You can only notice them when they arrive, quiet, complete, and curved like a soft bridge made of colour. And though they seem delicate, the light that creates them travels millions of miles, from the sun, through space, into a droplet, and back to your eye. Next time you see a rainbow, let it be more than colour. Let it remind you of what light can do in the presence of cloud and water. Let it soften your thoughts. Let it curve into your breath like a quiet smile from the sky. A rainbow is not rare because the sky is stingy. It's rare because it requires stillness, timing, and light coming from just the right place. Like comfort, like calm, like the soft arc between rain and rest. Far above the earth, where the sky deepens into a softer shade of blue, thin white trails sometimes stretch across the atmosphere. Straight, pale lines that seem drawn with a whisper. These are contrails, short for condensation trails. And though they may appear like strokes of skywriting, they are, at their core, a kind of man-made cloud. Contrails form when airplanes travel at high altitudes, usually above 26,000 feet, where the air is extremely cold and dry. The engines burn fuel, and in doing so, release a mixture of heat, gases, and water vapor. That vapor, hot when it exits the engine, meets the freezing air outside. In an instant, the moisture condenses into ice crystals, forming a thin, visible line behind the aircraft. It's a quiet process. No explosion, no spark. Just moisture meeting cold, similar to your breath turning visible on a winter morning. Each contrail is made of thousands, even millions, of tiny ice crystals suspended gently in the upper air. These clouds don't roar. They don't shimmer like lightning or roll like thunderclouds. They appear quietly and stretch across the sky in slow, deliberate lines, marking paths taken, journeys made. Some contrails vanish quickly, dissolving into the atmosphere within seconds or minutes. Others linger, spreading slowly, feathering outward, sometimes merging with natural cirrus clouds until they're indistinguishable from the sky's own weather. The difference lies in humidity. When the upper atmosphere is dry, contrails fade quickly. When it's moist, they persist, becoming soft, delicate brushstrokes on a vast canvas. Contrails can intersect, crisscrossing to form wide grid-like patterns. To the casual eye, it may look like the sky has been written upon, but these trails are simply the signatures of altitude and motion, shaped by winds that no one on the ground can feel. At sunrise or sunset, contrails often glow. Their icy makeup catches low-angled light, transforming into golden threads, coral stripes, or pale pink wisps stretched across the twilight. They add unexpected texture to the sky's color shift, accentuating the transition from day to night. Pilots, meteorologists, and skywatchers alike study contrails, not just for their beauty, but for the information they carry. Persistent contrails may signal approaching moisture or a change in pressure, subtle indicators of tomorrow's sky. They are not just visual artifacts, they are part of the atmosphere's ongoing dialogue. And while contrails are made by humans, they obey the same principles that govern all clouds: condensation, temperature, and altitude. Their creation is not artificial, but rather a natural response to introduced moisture-meeting environmental conditions. To watch a contrail is to watch a moment being left behind, a memory of motion preserved in ice, a journey recorded not in noise, but in presence. If you ever look up and notice a single line trailing behind a distant plane, let your thoughts drift with it. Imagine the altitude, the cold, the hush of thin air and scattered crystals. There's something soothing in the idea that even speed and distance can leave behind something so gentle. Contrails remind us that not everything fleeting is lost. Some things linger, quietly, beautifully, etched across the sky in lines too high to touch, but soft enough to calm. In winter's heart, when cold air settles over the land, and warmth rises only in whispers, a curious pattern may form in the sky, rows upon rows of narrow, evenly spaced clouds, stretching from horizon to horizon like lines drawn in delicate chalk. These are cloud streets. Cloud streets are long bands of cumulus clouds arranged in parallel rows. They often form over cold surfaces, frozen lakes, snow-covered fields, or chilled seas, when cold air blows across warmer ground or water, creating rising thermals that gather into rhythmic formations. From above, such as in satellite images, or from the window of a high-flying plane, these clouds appear like carefully combed strands, long, smooth, evenly spaced. From below, they offer a glimpse into the structured elegance of the lower atmosphere, where the sky seems to organize itself into order and motion. The process begins with instability. Cold air moves over a slightly warmer surface, and the contrast creates gentle convection, air that rises in narrow lines, spaced apart by descending currents. Where the air rises, cumulus clouds form. Where it sinks, the sky remains clear. The result is a striped pattern, rows of clouds aligned with the wind, moving in quiet unison. These formations are most common in polar or maritime climates. In Arctic regions, cloud streets may stretch uninterrupted for hundreds of miles, drifting slowly, casting narrow shadows on the icy surface below. Over oceans, they often accompany cold air outbreaks, forming behind frontal systems where the sea remains just warm enough to trigger cloud growth. Despite their organized appearance, cloud streets are not stormy. The clouds themselves are shallow and rarely produce precipitation. They are the atmosphere playing with symmetry, a display of balance between rising warmth and falling coolness. To stand beneath a sky of cloud streets is to feel aligned with something bigger. The lines draw your gaze outward and upward, guiding the eye along invisible currents. They evoke a feeling of flow, of being part of something vast, quiet, and moving. Birds sometimes ride the invisible highways between cloud rows, taking advantage of the rising air beneath the cumulus streets. Glider pilots, too, may seek out these patterns, using their lift to travel great distances without engines. Cloud streets often appear in the early morning or late afternoon, when the surface is still releasing stored warmth and winds are just steady enough to shape the air. By evening, they may fade, disassembled by changing temperatures, their paths undone by shifting breezes. There's no thunder in a cloud street, no flash, just repetition, rhythm, a pattern you could trace with a fingertip if the sky were close enough to touch. Next time you see parallel bands of clouds marching across the sky, know that you're witnessing an organized dance between earth and air, movement sculpted into softness, as predictable as breath. And like breath, they come and go, quiet, balanced, aligned with the land below and the cold sky above. Sometimes, when a thunderstorm grows tall enough to touch the upper limits of the troposphere, the sky shapes it into something unmistakable, flat-topped and wide, like a giant table resting above a tower. This is the anvil cloud, or more precisely, the anvil top of a cumulonimbus storm. a shape formed not with force, but with boundaries, a place where rising air meets the calm ceiling of the atmosphere and must spread rather than climb. Though associated with powerful storms, the anvil itself is a study in restraint. It forms when a storm's vertical growth reaches the tropopause, the thin layer that separates the troposphere, where weather happens, from the stratosphere, where air is more stable and dry. At this boundary, rising air can no longer lift. It flattens, it spreads outward, and in doing so, it creates the wide, horizontal shelf we recognize as an anvil cloud. From the side, it resembles a blacksmith's anvil, broad, flat, and sometimes asymmetrical, depending on the direction of the upper-level winds. From below, it may feel like the entire sky has stretched into a lid of grey or pale white. Anvils are made mostly of ice crystals. The upper atmosphere is cold, well below freezing, and the moisture that gathers here turns not to droplets, but to frozen shapes. These crystals catch sunlight differently than liquid water, often giving the anvil a soft, hazy glow around its edges. Though the clouds below may be bubbling and rising in dramatic towers, the anvil remains still. It's the calm surface at the storm's summit, the soft edge where motion pauses. Not because it's tired, but because it has reached the limit of how high it can go. Meteorologists pay special attention to anvils. Their formation marks the mature stage of a thunderstorm, the point where its internal processes are fully developed. Within the cloud below, warm air continues to rise, cool air begins to descend, and rain or hail may be falling. But the anvil is different. It's the record of how far the storm has climbed, how tall the atmosphere has allowed it to grow. Sometimes, wisps of the anvil drift ahead of the storm itself. These are called overspread anvils, carried by high winds, and they often announce the approach of a storm long before the rain arrives. Pilots see them as signals. Skywatchers see them as omens. But to the sleepy observer, they are simply another shape the sky chooses, quiet, broad, and soft-edged. The anvil's edges can stretch for miles, even when the parent storm remains centered in one location. It's not uncommon for sunlight to filter through the top while darkness builds below. At sunset, these wide cloud tops may glow orange or gold, like distant mesas touched by light. And after the storm has passed, the anvil may linger, like steam rising from a cooling pot. Its presence isn't threatening, it's what remains after energy has lifted and released. A shelf of cloud that tells the story of what the sky has just let go. You may never stand at the base of a cumulonimbus tower, but you can watch its anvil from afar, safe, still, and grounded. Let your gaze follow its edge. Let your breath match its width. Let it remind you that even in the most towering expressions of nature, there is a place where motion becomes rest. The anvil in the sky isn't loud. It isn't fast. It's simply where the storm stops climbing and begins to stretch, where turbulence meets silence, where upward ends and outward begins. When winter deepens and the air grows quiet and cold, the clouds above begin to change. They carry a different kind of softness, one not made of raindrops, but of delicate crystals. Snow clouds. Their presence feels hushed, their movement slow. They don't bring noise or urgency, but instead arrive like a gentle promise. Something is falling, and it won't make a sound. All clouds begin as invisible vapor, rising through the atmosphere until it cools and condenses into visible form. But for snow clouds, the air must be especially cold, often below freezing, not only at the surface, but throughout the depth of the cloud. In this colder world, moisture doesn't become droplets. It becomes ice. These ice crystals form around microscopic particles, dust, salt, or even bits of pollen. At first, they're tiny, but as they drift and collide with other crystals, they begin to grow. They may branch into six-pointed stars, clump into soft bundles, or stretch into long, feathery needles. Every snowflake is a record of its path through the cloud, shaped by temperature, humidity, and time. Snow clouds are usually thick and layered, often appearing as low, grey blankets that stretch across the sky. These are typically nimbostratus, or stratiform clouds, quiet, wide, and heavy with moisture. Unlike towering thunderclouds, snow clouds do not rise in great columns. They spread gently, covering the landscape with even, steady snowfall. Within the cloud, snowflakes begin their descent long before we see them. They drift slowly, caught in gentle air currents, sometimes rising and falling several times before finally making their way down. If the air beneath the cloud remains cold, the flakes arrive intact, soft, lacy, and distinct. But if the lower air is warmer, they may melt into sleet or rain before reaching the ground. On especially cold days, when the air is dry and still, snow clouds can release what's known as diamond dust, tiny, shimmering ice crystals that sparkle in the sunlight, drifting almost invisibly through the air. It's not snowfall in the traditional sense, but a kind of frozen glitter, often seen in Arctic regions or on frigid mornings. Snow clouds don't always signal a storm. In fact, some of the calmest weather arrives with gentle snow. The sky turns a pale, silvery grey. The light becomes diffuse, as if passed through layers of silk. And the snow begins, not in a rush, but in a slow, steady whisper. You might notice how the world changes under snow clouds. Sounds become softer, edges blur, the rhythm of life slows. Trees hold their breath, roads grow quiet, and above it all, the sky offers its quiet gift, flake by flake, breath by breath. So the next time the sky turns heavy and pale, and the first flakes begin to fall, take a moment to look up. That grey ceiling isn't just a cover, it's a cradle, a place where crystals are born, where water becomes lace, and where clouds give something back to the earth without making a sound. Snow clouds are reminders that even the coldest skies carry beauty. That silence can be full, and that softness often begins high above, where the cold air waits, patient and still. When you look down on a sunny day and see the light dim briefly, or feel a momentary coolness brushing across your skin, you may be standing in the shadow of a cloud. But unlike the firm, fixed outlines of a building or a tree, cloud shadows move with a hush. They drift, they stretch, they soften everything they touch. The science behind a cloud's shadow is simple, but the experience of it feels poetic. A shadow forms when an object blocks the path of light. Clouds, floating between the sun and the earth, do this gently. They filter and scatter sunlight, not just blocking it, but diffusing it, turning sharp rays into something muted. The result is a large, faintly edged patch of shade. It's not cold, it's not dark, but it's quieter. The temperature beneath a cloud shadow may drop slightly. The colours of the landscape change, becoming more subdued, less saturated. It's as if the world below takes a breath. Cloud shadows are larger than the clouds themselves, because sunlight travels in beams that fan out slightly. A small cumulus cloud, floating a few thousand feet above the ground, can cast a shadow several times wider than its own shape. And because clouds are always in motion, their shadows are too. Watch a meadow or hillside on a partly cloudy day, and you'll see light moving. The ground brightens, then dims. Trees wave in and out of shade. It's like a silent conversation between the sky and the earth, written in light and shadow. Pilots see this from above, dark patches gliding across the surface below, chasing the shape of the clouds above them. Sometimes you can even spot your plane's shadow on a distant cloud layer, surrounded by a soft circular rainbow called a glory. This moment, high above the world, connects light, moisture, and motion in one quiet frame. In mountainous areas, cloud shadows add texture to the landscape. They stretch over ridges, slip down valleys, rest momentarily on lakes. And in open plains, their presence is even more noticeable. Slow-moving shades that seem to caress the earth. Artists and photographers love cloud shadows for their mood. They give depth to scenes, movement to stillness. A sunlit peak framed by darkened slopes. A farmhouse lit from above while the fields sleep in grey. Scientifically, cloud shadows can also affect how warm the surface gets. Areas that remain in shadow longer heat more slowly, which can influence local breezes and even small-scale weather patterns. But for most of us, these shadows are simply moments of pause. They arrive without sound. They leave without warning. A soft sweep of sky moving across the world below. Next time you see one, pause your steps. Let it pass over you like a soft breath. Notice how the light shifts. Notice how your own shadow blurs. Because even the sky, for all its brightness, sometimes chooses to shade gently. And that too is part of its kindness. Not all clouds are born beneath Earth's sky. Beyond our atmosphere, across the vast silence of space, other worlds hold skies of their own, and in those alien skies, clouds drift too. They are not always made of water. They may not even be white, but they float, they swirl, they soften the stars above distant landscapes. On Venus, clouds are thick and golden, made not of water vapor, but of sulfuric acid. They stretch in endless layers across a sky that glows like aged brass, moving slowly in a dense atmosphere that wraps the planet like a heavy cloak. These clouds reflect sunlight brilliantly, giving Venus its bright appearance from Earth. But beneath them, the surface remains hidden, veiled forever in golden mist. Mars has its own clouds too. High in the thin atmosphere, wisps of water ice clouds sometimes form near the poles or drift gently over ancient volcanoes. These Martian clouds are faint and subtle, often seen just before dawn or at twilight. They remind us that even a desert planet can carry traces of softness in its sky. Jupiter, the gas giant, is a planet made almost entirely of atmosphere. Its clouds are vast, multi-layered, and endlessly swirling. They are composed of ammonia, water vapor, and unknown compounds that give rise to colors, creams, ochres, oranges, and pale blues. The bands of clouds stretch across the entire planet, driven by jet streams moving in opposite directions. The Great Red Spot, a colossal storm larger than Earth, has been turning for centuries within this flowing tapestry. Saturn's clouds share many of Jupiter's traits, but they add their own mystery. At the planet's north pole, a strange hexagonal cloud pattern persists, six-sided and rotating, as though geometry itself has taken shape in the sky. Saturn's upper atmosphere holds streaks and curls of ammonia clouds, floating above deeper, unseen layers. On Uranus and Neptune, where the air is colder than anywhere we've known, clouds are made of methane. They appear as faint bands and streaks, in an otherwise quiet, icy blue sky. Neptune, though distant, sometimes shows bright white clouds that swirl and vanish, driven by the fastest winds in the solar system. Yet from afar, it still looks tranquil, like a glass marble drifting through shadow. Even moons have clouds. On Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a thick orange atmosphere holds clouds of methane and ethane. They form and dissolve slowly, falling as a kind of rain, not water, but liquid hydrocarbons, onto a landscape of lakes and rivers made from something other than water, beneath a sky that never fully clears. Each of these alien clouds tells us something new about what it means to float, to condense, to scatter light. They are made from different materials, shaped by different physics, but they still share the same impulse, to drift and change and soften the light above. If you ever look up and see a gentle cloud passing across your own sky, you might take comfort in knowing that you are not alone. Across the cosmos, clouds are forming, on planets and moons and worlds we've only just begun to understand. Some are faint, some are stormy. Some may be glowing under suns very different from ours. But all of them are sky dwellers. All of them belong to the quiet poetry of atmosphere. And in some far-off night, perhaps someone or something will look up from another world and see a cloud drifting by, and feel the same calm wonder you feel now. High in the sky, there are moments when clouds begin to release their moisture, soft streaks of rain falling from their base. But before the droplets reach the ground, they disappear, fading into nothing. This quiet phenomenon is called virga, and it is one of the gentlest vanishing acts in all of weather. Virga appears as trailing wisps beneath a cloud, like the fringe of a curtain or the tail of a veil. It's rain, or sometimes snow, that begins to fall but never arrives. Suspended between sky and earth, the precipitation evaporates or sublimates before it can touch us. The word virga comes from Latin, meaning branch or streak, and the name fits. These sky trails stretch downward like silver threads, visible against sunlight or backlit clouds. They may look like soft brushstrokes in motion, falling without landing, always moving, always fading. Virga forms when precipitation begins to fall from a cloud, usually from altostratus, cumulonimbus, or nimbostratus layers, but meets a layer of dry air beneath. As the rain or snow descends into this drier layer, it evaporates, or, in the case of ice, sublimates before ever reaching the ground. From the ground, virga can appear ghost-like. Its wisps trail downward in elegant arcs or straight lines, swaying with high winds. At sunset, it may glow in shades of orange, pink, or gold, catching light in mid-fall. Sometimes it resembles jellyfish tendrils or the train of a gown, soft and suspended in descent. In deserts and dry climates, virga is especially common. The clouds above still hold moisture, but the air below is too parched to let the rain arrive. You may smell the scent of distant rainfall, called petrichor, without ever feeling a drop. The atmosphere carries the story of rain, even when no part of it touches Earth. Pilots watch for virga carefully. It can signal turbulence or downdrafts as the falling, evaporating air cools and accelerates downward. But from a quiet hillside or shaded porch, virga is simply something to observe, a visible trace of water's journey halfway home. Meteorologically, virga is a sign of transition. It tells us that clouds are trying to release, that conditions are close to changing. It may mean that moisture is building, or it may simply be a display of how atmosphere balances itself, offering then withholding. And emotionally, there is something poetic in Virga. A gesture begun but not completed. A whisper of rain that passes without a footprint. It reminds us that not everything has to arrive fully to be felt. That beginnings can still be beautiful, even without endings. Next time you see streaks falling from a cloud and vanishing before they land, take a slow breath. Let it mirror their motion, downward, soft, fading. Let it be a reminder that some things fall away before they're ever touched, and still they leave an impression. Virga is the sky practicing grace, a rainfall made of memory, a descent without disturbance, a gift that disappears before it ever needs to be unwrapped. High in the sky, there are moments when clouds begin to release their moisture, soft streaks of rain falling from their base. But before the droplets reach the ground, they disappear, fading into nothing. This quiet phenomenon is called Virga, and it is one of the gentlest vanishing acts in all of weather. Virga appears as trailing wisps beneath a cloud, like the fringe of a curtain or the tail of a veil. It's rain, or sometimes snow, that begins to fall but never arrives. Suspended between sky and earth, the precipitation evaporates or sublimates before it can touch us. The word Virga comes from Latin, meaning branch or streak, and the name fits. These sky trails stretch downward like silver threads, visible against sunlight or backlit clouds. They may look like soft brushstrokes in motion, falling without landing, always moving, always fading. Virga forms when precipitation begins to fall from a cloud, usually from altostratus, cumulonimbus, or nimbostratus layers, but meets a layer of dry air beneath. As the rain or snow descends into this drier layer, it evaporates, or, in the case of ice, sublimates, before ever reaching the ground. From the ground, Virga can appear ghost-like. Its wisps trail downward in elegant arcs or straight lines, swaying with high winds. At sunset, it may glow in shades of orange, pink, or gold, catching light in mid-fall. Sometimes it resembles jellyfish tendrils or the train of a gown, soft and suspended in descent. In deserts and dry climates, Virga is especially common. The clouds above still hold moisture, but the air below is too parched to let the rain arrive. You may smell the scent of distant rainfall, called petrichor, without ever feeling a drop. The atmosphere carries the story of rain, even when no part of it touches Earth. Pilots watch for Virga carefully. It can signal turbulence or downdrafts as the falling, evaporating air cools and accelerates downward. But from a quiet hillside or shaded porch, Virga is simply something to observe, a visible trace of water's journey halfway home. Meteorologically, Virga is a sign of transition. It tells us that clouds are trying to release, that conditions are close to changing. It may mean that moisture is building, or it may simply be a display of how atmosphere balances itself, offering, then withholding. And emotionally, there is something poetic in Virga, a gesture begun but not completed, a whisper of rain that passes without a footprint. It reminds us that not everything has to arrive fully to be felt, that beginnings can still be beautiful, even without endings. Next time you see streaks falling from a cloud and vanishing before they land, take a slow breath. Let it mirror their motion, downward, soft, fading. Let it be a reminder that some things fall away before they're ever touched, and still they leave an impression. Virga is the sky practicing grace, a rainfall made of memory, a descent without disturbance, a gift that disappears before it ever needs to be unwrapped. In the earliest hours of morning, when the sun is just beginning to stir and the world still holds the softness of sleep, meadows often greet the day with a blanket of mist. It hangs low, hovering just above the grass, curling through trees and resting gently on fence posts and flowers. This morning, mist is a form of fog, but thinner, more delicate, more fleeting. It forms during cool, calm nights when the Earth's warmth rises into the air and is then released. As the ground cools under clear skies, the moisture near the surface begins to condense. When the air reaches its dew point, its point of saturation, mist forms. Unlike rain or snow, mist doesn't fall, it simply appears. Suspended in the air, it drifts in place, made of countless tiny droplets of water, too light to fall and too dense to vanish. It softens everything it touches, not physically, but visually. Lines blur, details fade, the world becomes a watercolor. In meadows, where grasses breathe moisture overnight, and trees stand still with their leaves unshaken, mist finds an ideal cradle. It clings to the contours of the land, dipping into valleys, rising over hedges, sweeping through open fields. It is the breath of the land rising to meet the morning. As sunlight arrives, the mist begins to glow, not with brilliance, but with quiet illumination. Beams of light pierce through it in slow shafts, casting long, faint shadows and lighting up each droplet like dew caught in the air. Birdsong often begins while the mist still lingers, adding sound to a world already thick with softness. Footsteps are muffled, roads are still, and all around the meadow waits, half seen, half felt. This kind of mist doesn't last. As the sun climbs higher, it warms the air, lifting the temperature above the dew point. The droplets evaporate. The mist thins, edges sharpen. The meadow emerges from its shroud, revealed again to the clarity of day. But for those brief minutes, there's a quiet magic. The world is slower, the air is kinder, and everything feels wrapped in a calm that's hard to name. In folklore, morning mist has often been seen as a veil between worlds, a place where time pauses, a moment when nature inhales before the day begins. To walk through it is to walk through something sacred, not because it is rare, but because it is momentary. You cannot hold mist. You cannot chase it. You can only notice it, breathe with it, and let it pass through you. Next time you rise early and see mist resting over a meadow, take a moment to be still. Let the coolness of the air settle on your skin. Watch how the light dances slowly through the haze, and let your breath slow to match the sky's pace. Mist does not demand your attention, it simply waits for you to notice. And in doing so, it reminds you that even the smallest droplets, gathered in silence, can create an entire landscape of calm. Along the quiet edges of the sea, where the land meets the long exhale of ocean air, a particular kind of softness forms, sea fog. It is not quite cloud, not quite breeze, but something in between, a gentle visitor that arrives in silence and stays until the sun lifts it away. Sea fog is born from the meeting of opposites. Warm, moist air drifting over cooler ocean waters begins to chill. As it cools, the invisible water vapor within it condenses into countless tiny droplets, forming a low, gauzy layer that floats just above the sea's surface. It's as though the sky has sunk a little lower, stretching a silken veil across the water. From the shoreline, this fog can look like a cloud that has lost its way. It creeps slowly inland, softening buildings, trees, and boats. Sound becomes muffled. Colors grow pale. Edges blur. The horizon disappears, and all things seem wrapped in a shared quiet. Coastal breezes help shape this fog's behavior. During the day, warm air over the land rises, and cooler air from the sea flows in to replace it. This is the sea breeze. It carries the fog inland, sometimes just a whisper above the ground, slipping into harbours, dunes, and coastal fields. At night, the pattern may reverse. Cooler land air slides back out to sea, pulling the fog with it, as though gently tidying the edges of the day. To walk through sea fog is to move through softness itself. The droplets cling gently to hair and skin. Surfaces become damp, not soaked. It's not a storm, it's not even rain, just the breath of ocean air made visible. Fishermen, sailors, and coastal dwellers know this fog well. It is both familiar and mysterious, a sign of change, a cloak of stillness. Sometimes the fog lifts all at once, rising like a curtain drawn from the world. Other times it thins slowly, layer by layer, until the day is revealed beneath it. When sunlight pierces through from above, it creates sunbeams known as crepuscular rays, slanting through the mist like threads of gold. Sea fog is more than scenery. It plays a role in the local climate, regulating temperatures and bringing moisture to coastal ecosystems. Plants that grow near the ocean often rely on this fog for hydration. Tiny droplets settle on leaves and petals, offering water where rain may not. Photographers love sea fog for its dreamy atmosphere. Writers find metaphors in its hush, and those seeking calm often find it in the way fog allows the world to fade just enough to feel safe. If you ever find yourself near the sea and the fog begins to roll in, don't rush indoors. Pause. Listen. The world will have changed, but not in any loud or urgent way. Just a quiet shift, a softening. Let the fog wrap around you like a cool shawl. Let your breath slow to match the pace of the tide. The sea and sky are speaking in whispers now, and you are invited to listen. Even the most towering clouds have their gentle side. Cumulonimbus clouds, often called thunderclouds, are known for their impressive height and dramatic form. But when told softly, their story becomes one of quiet majesty, a slow and graceful build, layer by layer, like the atmosphere taking a long, deep breath. It all begins with warm, moist air rising. At first, there's nothing visible, just invisible motion, lifting upward in silence. As the air ascends, it cools. Water vapor condenses into cloud droplets, and the base of a cumulus cloud begins to form. If the air is especially buoyant, the cloud continues to rise, developing vertically, stretching toward higher altitudes. It becomes a cumulus congestus, and eventually, when tall enough, a cumulonimbus. These clouds can reach great heights, up to 60,000 feet in some regions, spanning from the low levels of the troposphere to the very top. But from a distance, they don't roar, they drift, their tops spread out into soft anvils, feathering gently at the edges where they meet the upper winds. The base may seem dark, but this is only because sunlight can't penetrate its thickness. The middle of the cloud is full of slow, spiraling motion. Currents of rising and descending air twist around one another, like quiet streams meeting. Ice crystals form near the top, glinting softly if caught in sunlight. Raindrops begin to grow in the middle layers, not falling yet, but gathering, waiting for the right moment. Despite their reputation, cumulonimbus clouds are not always loud. Sometimes they pass over in silence, their rain falling like a soft curtain. At night, distant lightning may glow within them, not jagged or jarring, but like a lantern flickering behind a veil. Thunder, when it does arrive, can sound like a far-off drum roll, softened by distance and time. For meteorologists, these clouds are signs of atmospheric energy, But for poets, artists, and sleepy observers, they are sculptures of motion. Their forms evolve with patience. Their shadows stretch across the landscape, dimming fields and cities alike in a cool, moving shade. Pilots give them space, not out of fear, but out of respect for their vast structure. Satellites see their tops from orbit, sprawling like snowy mountains across continents. And children on the ground might look up and wonder how something so large can float at all. The truth is, these clouds are supported by the very air beneath them, rising, lifting, carrying. The same air that moves across your skin on a breezy day, now holding thousands of tons of water in suspension. When rain does fall, it may come with rhythm, gentle at first, a pattern on rooftops, a tapping on windows, then perhaps a heavier pulse before it fades again, trailing off into mist. The cloud will eventually collapse inward, its energy spent, returning moisture to the earth below. In this softened telling, the towering cumulonimbus is not a threat, but a wonder, a slow-building cathedral of cloud and air, a reminder that even great forces can move with grace. So, if you see one rising in the distance, let your gaze follow it upward. Trace its arcs, watch its slow bloom, and know that within that vast column of sky, a delicate story is unfolding, one of warmth rising, water dancing, and the quiet power of the atmosphere at work. In the vast cathedral of the sky, clouds don't crash into one another with force or frenzy. They meet with softness, like threads brushing in a loom, weaving subtle shifts in light, form, and moisture. The gentle collision of clouds is a quiet conversation in the atmosphere, a blending of temperatures, air currents, and vapor. Most often, this meeting happens along boundaries, places where different air masses press together. These boundaries are called fronts. Picture a warm cloud mass drifting slowly into a cooler one. Their edges begin to mingle. Not instantly, not dramatically, but with patience. The clouds change shape as they merge, their outlines blurring, their colors mixing into one another, like watercolor in the sky. Sometimes, these meetings produce a new kind of cloud. A cumulus may spread and stretch, becoming stratus-like as it mingles with cooler air. Or thin cirrus streaks may ripple into altostratus as upper-level winds pull and blend their icy threads. The process is slow, nearly imperceptible, but overhead, the sky is always shaping itself anew. This gentle cloud-to-cloud interaction also plays a role in precipitation. When different cloud types overlap, layers of moisture may thicken. Raindrops can begin to form where warmer and cooler layers mix, coalescing silently. If the droplets grow heavy enough, they fall, not in torrents, but as a soft, scattered rain. Sometimes, you might notice these moments of mingling when looking up. The sky seems layered, with patches of puffier clouds meeting flat sheets of grey. Light filters through differently in each section, casting shadows and glows that move as the clouds drift. It's a kind of sky patchwork, stitched together by the winds. When clouds collide gently, they create dynamic displays of texture. The edges may curl or ripple. Small pockets of sky open, then close again. Sunlight peeks through gaps, then disappears behind veils. It's a living mural, shifting with time, temperature, and airflow. Pilots call these boundaries zones of cloud convergence. They mark areas where updrafts and downdrafts can change. But from the ground, all we see is beauty. The sky doesn't need labels to be appreciated. It just needs time. A few quiet moments to look up and notice the softness overhead. These interactions also tell us something important about the atmosphere. It's never static. Even in moments of apparent stillness, something is always adjusting. Clouds move, not in isolation, but in relation to one another. And just like people, when they meet gently, something new and harmonious can form. The next time you notice two different cloud types sharing the sky, watch how they respond to one another. Notice if one layer thickens while another fades. Notice the subtle shadows and the shifting tones. You are witnessing a meeting of air and water, warmed by sunlight and shaped by the unseen hand of the wind. Let this be a reminder that not all change is sudden. Some change is slow, quiet, and soft. Some change begins with a whisper and ends with a new shape taking place above you. So breathe with the sky. Let the slow pace of clouds meeting above match the stillness within you. Nothing is in a rush. Nothing is being forced. Just motion. Just merging. Just the sky, teaching us how to move gently through the world. There is a particular stillness that settles beneath an overcast sky. A soft quiet, as though the world is being gently tucked in by a blanket of grey. On these days, the sky is not dramatic or bright. It is uniform, gentle, and subdued. The sun is still there, but it hides behind a curtain of cloud, diffusing its light like a lamp behind frosted glass. Overcast skies are created by thick layers of stratus or stratocumulus clouds, spread wide across the atmosphere like a quilt laid across the heavens. Unlike towering storm clouds or scattered cumulus puffballs, these clouds are continuous, uninterrupted. They form when moisture is spread evenly through a stable layer of air, allowing clouds to stretch outward instead of upward. On overcast days, the shadows fade. Light becomes soft and even. There are no sharp contrasts, no bright highlights or deep darkness. It's as if the entire landscape is gently exhaling, taking a break from the boldness of sunlight. The air may feel cooler, the wind slower. Sounds become rounder, quieter. Car tires hum instead of roar. Footsteps seem lighter, and conversations take on a hushed tone. It's a kind of atmospheric hush, inviting calm. For many, overcast days bring a cozy feeling, a nudge toward stillness, the kind of weather that invites warm drinks, soft sweaters, and gentle reflection. The sky isn't asking you to look up in awe, it's encouraging you to settle in. In nature, overcast conditions often signal moisture in the air. Sometimes, light rain or drizzle follows. But even without precipitation, these clouds bring a sense of moisture, like the sky is heavy with thought. Gardeners may smile at such days, knowing the earth stays damp, the plants drink slowly, and the sun doesn't evaporate the morning's offering. The visual effect of an overcast sky is like a watercolor wash. Tones are muted, softened. Greens become mossy, blues turn to slate, and everything wears a quiet glow. It's a color palette of restfulness. Photographers love overcast light. It wraps gently around subjects, smoothing edges and reducing harsh glare. Skin looks softer, landscapes more dreamlike. It's the sky's own version of a diffuser, filtering light into something calm and even. Birds may fly lower on overcast days. Insects slow their motion. The entire rhythm of the natural world adjusts, sinking to a more relaxed tempo. And we, too, can join that rhythm, breathing slower, moving with intention, releasing the need to rush. In some places, overcast skies linger for days or weeks. Coastal towns, mountain valleys, and northern latitudes often wear this weather like a shawl. For residents, it becomes part of the daily rhythm, a backdrop of grey that makes occasional sun all the more special. But even within the grey, there is variety. Some overcast skies are cool and silvery. Others are warmer, tinged with peach or violet, especially near sunrise or sunset. Look closely, and you may notice subtle waves, undulations, and textures in the cloud cover, like brushstrokes in the sky. Overcast doesn't mean dull. It means soft. It means deep. It means allowing the world to rest under a sky that asks nothing but stillness in return. So if you find yourself beneath such a sky, let it cradle your thoughts. Let it lull your senses. Let it be the gentle pause in your day, a reminder that not all beauty is bold. Some of it is quiet. Some of it wears grey. Sometimes the sky doesn't speak with thunder or pour with drama. Sometimes it simply whispers. And when it does, that whisper often takes the shape of falling moisture, soft rain, gentle mist, or even fine drizzle that seems to float as much as fall. Falling moisture begins its journey high above, inside clouds made of countless tiny water droplets. These droplets, though suspended for a time, eventually grow too heavy to be held by the surrounding air. Not all at once, and not with a rush, but with the patience of nature unfolding. They begin to fall, drawn quietly earthward by gravity. But this descent is not always obvious. In gentle rain, the droplets are small and spaced apart. They don't drum on rooftops or splash in gutters. They tap, barely audible, like fingers on a page. On leaves, they gather into beads. On windows, they trace faint rivulets. The world beneath soft rain becomes hushed, softened by the rhythm of water returning to the ground. Mist is even quieter. It seems to hover in place, more like breathing than raining. It clings to your eyelashes, to tree bark, to cobblestones. You don't always notice it falling, but you feel it on your skin. It's the sky's breath, drawn low. This moisture doesn't just touch the surface. It moves into soil, into bark, into the air itself. It nourishes plants and cools the landscape. In forests, it makes moss glow. In meadows, it adds shimmer to spider webs. It's the quiet hand of the sky tending the earth below. For meteorologists, these soft falls are measured in hundredths of an inch. They are called light precipitation, and they may not register on radar with the same clarity as storms. But they are no less meaningful. Over time, these gentle offerings can add up to deep nourishment. In the language of weather, terms like drizzle, sprinkle, and mist describe not just size, but character. They tell us that the sky is in a gentle mood, and we can match that pace. We can walk more slowly, breathe more deeply, and notice the scent of rain in the air, earthy, cool, and alive. The sound of falling moisture is a kind of lullaby. On rooftops, it becomes a soft patter. On leaves, a hushed tickle. On lakes, it's a series of tiny dimples, a quivering surface responding to the touch of the sky. You can fall asleep to such sounds. Many do, because something in them says, rest, all is being cared for. In cities, light rain adds reflection. Sidewalks become mirrors. Neon lights stretch across the wet pavement. Cars pass slowly. Umbrellas bloom like quiet flowers. The rush softens. In the countryside, these moments feel older. The earth smells rich, the animals quiet, the fences dripping, the fields glistening. It is as though the land remembers something gentle, and when the rain stops, everything seems more awake. Leaves shine, air feels clean. Even birds seem to chirp more crisply, shaking off the droplets as they return to their branches. So, when you hear the whisper of falling moisture outside your window, or feel it on your walk to nowhere, Know that you are in a moment of care. The sky is not warning, but offering, not calling out, but murmuring. Let yourself receive it. Let it lull you. Let it soften the corners of your thoughts, because even the sky knows how to be quiet. Even on the quietest afternoons, the earth is breathing, not in quick inhales or strong gusts, but in the slow, rising warmth that lifts from fields, rooftops, and tree-lined valleys. This invisible breath is what gives birth to a kind of cloud that looks as soft as it feels. Cumulus. Cumulus clouds are the sky's pillows, formed when gentle heat from the earth rises, cooling slightly as it climbs, until the moisture within begins to condense. But this is not an instant change. It's gradual, rhythmic, like steam curling from a warm cup of tea. These clouds often begin small, like quiet puffs, barely noticeable in a big sky. But as the afternoon continues and the sun shares more of its warmth, they grow, bubbling upward in soft mounds. Still, they remain tender in their presence, never harsh, never abrupt, just blooming in the sky's upper garden. Each one has a base, flat and quiet, and a crown that billows upward in slow motion. They appear to sit still, but inside there's a quiet rising, a subtle dance between evaporation and condensation. Updrafts gently feed them, while the air around remains calm. From below, these clouds look like a parade of soft sculptures. They catch sunlight on their rounded tops, while their undersides remain in soft shadow. At times, they resemble animals, or castles, or drifting dreams, shapes that change every moment, never settling into just one form. They are common over open fields, especially in the warmth of summer. A meadow bathed in sunlight sends waves of gentle lift into the atmosphere. That air carries tiny traces of moisture, breath from grass, trees, soil, and gently swirls them into the beginnings of a cloud. Children lie on blankets beneath these clouds, pointing at the shapes. Birds glide beneath them. Airplanes occasionally leave trails above them, but the clouds themselves remain untouched, floating at altitudes where they are left to their slow sculpting by wind and warmth. Sometimes, these sky pillows gather in groups. They cluster loosely, each puff separate but related, like thoughts floating across a calm mind. Other times, they appear solo, one quiet bloom in a wide blue sky. And when evening comes, the sun paints them in amber and peach. Their rounded tops glow for a while before gently fading. As the warmth from the surface ebbs, the updrafts quiet too. The clouds thin. Some dissipate. Others linger into the twilight, holding on to just a little of the day's breath. Cumulus clouds remind us that even the act of warming and rising can be peaceful. That upward motion doesn't need to be abrupt. It can be calm, guided by the rhythm of nature's clock. They are the visible result of warmth meeting moisture, of air finding room to move. And in the stillness of early evening, when the sky begins to soften, these clouds often drift apart, not hurriedly, not with urgency, but with the quiet understanding that their time for floating has passed. They return their moisture slowly to the air, and the sky once again becomes a wide, open canvas. Tonight, if the air is still and the day's warmth lingers, perhaps you'll glimpse one last fading cumulus in the distance, still lit softly by the setting sun. Let it remind you that even the sky rests, even warmth has its rhythm, and even the lightest clouds are born from the earth's breath. There is a hush that settles over the hills when fog arrives. In the early morning, just before the first beams of sunlight stretch over the treetops, something soft begins to form. It doesn't come with fanfare or flourish, it simply appears. A fine, silvery mist rises from the ground, winding through the trees, curling over mossy stones, and resting in the gentle folds of the landscape. This is fog, and when it forms over forested hills, it becomes a kind of quiet magic, an atmosphere so calm it almost seems to hum. Fog is a cloud that has wandered close, deciding for a time to embrace the earth. Unlike the grand forms we see floating high above, fog belongs to the surface. It forms when cool air lingers near the ground and meets the right level of moisture. As the air chills overnight, especially in valleys or near wooded slopes, the moisture within it condenses into tiny water droplets suspended in air. It's not a downpour, not even a drizzle, just a softened thickening of the air itself. Forested hills are especially welcoming to fog. The trees exhale moisture throughout the day, and the earth beneath them often holds on to the day's warmth. This delicate balance of warmth and coolness, of moisture and stillness, makes the perfect environment for fog to form. And when it does, everything slows. Sound becomes muffled, footsteps on a forest path seem quieter, bird calls more distant. The trees, usually crisp in silhouette, become gentle outlines. Their trunks fade into the softness. Even the colours of the world seem dimmed, as though wrapped in velvet. It is a scene held in a hush. In the deeper folds of the forest, fog nestles like a blanket. It curls low around roots and creeps up branches, wrapping itself in the boughs of pines and oaks. Sunlight filters through it in long golden beams when morning begins. Each shaft of light is softened, glowing like something remembered from a dream. This kind of fog rarely rushes. It lingers. It rolls slowly, never in a hurry. And as the sun climbs higher, warming the air and lifting the chill from the ground, the fog gradually begins to thin. You can watch it pull back like a tide, slipping off hillsides and retreating into the higher branches before disappearing altogether. But while it lasts, fog over forested hills feels like a pause in the world's turning, a suspended moment. And for those wandering within it, walkers, deer, small birds, it is as though they are moving through another time, another version of the morning, quieter and more forgiving. Fog doesn't always follow a pattern. Sometimes it clings to just one side of a hill, leaving the other in light. Sometimes it coils upward from riverbeds, spreading outward like a sigh. And other times it gathers high and flows downward, moving like slow breath across a forest's chest. Even after it lifts, fog leaves behind a softness. Leaves hold onto droplets that sparkle when touched by sun. The ground feels gentler beneath your feet, and the memory of that hush, of that cool, quiet presence, lingers well into the day. Tonight, as you imagine the quiet folds of foggy hills, let yourself feel the way air slows down. Let your breath match its rhythm. Let the world fade at the edges, just like a tree in mist. Even in sleep, fog reminds us. Some things are meant to be felt more than seen. And sometimes, the most beautiful parts of the sky are the ones that come down to meet us. Look up on a calm afternoon, and you might see the sky dressed in quiet texture. Stratocumulus clouds are the artists of the middle sky, painting broad strokes of softness across the heavens. They are not high and wispy, nor towering and bold. Instead, they sprawl gently, often in dappled formations that look like stretched cotton or soft quilting. There is a peaceful rhythm in their appearance, an organized chaos that feels neither rushed nor random. These clouds typically form between 1,200 to 6,500 feet above the ground, floating in that comfortable in-between layer of the atmosphere. They are born from stable air masses, where moisture and cool temperatures mingle just enough to encourage condensation, but not enough to build towering heights. Stratocumulus does not seek drama. It prefers the gentle presence of lingering light and subtle movement. From below, the sky might appear as if it's been gently sponged with varying shades of grey, white, and soft silver blue. These clouds often arrange themselves in patches or layers, with small breaks of blue peeking through, like glimpses of calm behind a curtain. There's something inherently soothing about this cloud form. It stretches far across the horizon, often as far as the eye can see, moving slowly with the wind. Sometimes they clump into rounded mounds, and other times they spread in wide, flat sheets. The sky becomes a canvas, and stratocumulus clouds become its brushwork. They do not typically bring heavy rain, perhaps a sprinkle, perhaps nothing at all. Their presence is more about tone than action. They influence the day's light, softening the sun into a milky glow, especially in the morning and late afternoon. Shadows become less harsh. Everything takes on a quiet, diffused quality, like being inside a softly lit room. Airplanes flying above stratocumulus often rise into clearer skies, looking down on the textured top of the cloud layer, an endless ocean of gentle undulations. But from the ground, the experience is altogether different. It is not the grandeur of a storm, nor the brightness of a clear day. It is a lull, a comfort, a middle ground where weather rests. There's poetry in how these clouds reflect mood. On some days, they stretch out in vast monotone, the sky taking on a solemn stillness. On others, they sparkle with backlit brilliance, each rounded puff outlined in silver by the sun's low angle. As evening arrives, stratocumulus can catch the last light, glowing in amber, rose, and lavender tones. The sky becomes a blanket of peace, inviting the world to slow. Stratocumulus is often mistaken for other cloud types, too low to be altocumulus, not thick enough to be nimbostratus, too orderly to be pure stratus. But that's part of its charm. It lives in the quiet spaces between definitions. It's a cloud of transition and rest. On coastlines, stratocumulus often drifts in from marine layers, cooling the land with its presence. Over forests and plains, it can blanket the sky in calm. And in the city, it casts soft shadows between buildings, quieting the light and bringing a hush to the afternoon. So, if you find yourself under a sky patterned with these dappled forms, let yourself pause. Let your eyes follow the gentle shapes. Let your breath find their rhythm. They are not in a hurry, they are simply being. Stratocumulus reminds us that not every sky must be bright or bold. Sometimes, the most comforting skies are the ones that speak in textures, the ones that whisper instead of shout, and the ones that hold us, not with drama, but with stillness. There's something magical in the way clouds seem to hover, weightless and adrift. And yet, they are made of water, sometimes millions of pounds of it. So why don't they fall? The answer is hidden in softness, in balance, in the gentle, upward embrace of the sky itself. Clouds form when water vapor condenses around tiny particles in the air: dust, pollen, salt. These microscopic droplets or ice crystals come together, forming what we see as clouds. But each individual droplet is so small, so light, that gravity barely notices. They float, not because they defy gravity, but because other forces support them. One of those is buoyancy. the rising of warm air. When sunlight warms the ground, the air near the surface heats up and begins to rise. This gentle lift helps carry moisture upward. As the air ascends, it cools and condensation begins. A cloud is born within this upward motion, its weight held aloft by the very breath of the earth. Inside a cloud, the droplets are constantly in motion, rising, falling, colliding. But because they are so small, their descent is incredibly slow. They drift downward at less than a centimetre per second, often outpaced by the rising air around them. It's like trying to walk down an escalator that's moving up. You're always gently lifted, never quite reaching the ground. This delicate balance keeps clouds suspended, not static, but gliding, floating in patterns shaped by air currents, pressure, and temperature. Different types of clouds have different relationships with these forces. High cirrus clouds, made of ice crystals, are carried by fast winds far above. Puffy cumulus clouds ride thermal currents like hot air balloons. Layered stratus clouds spread wide, supported by gentle horizontal motion. Even towering cumulonimbus clouds, those grand vertical sculptures, are made possible by strong updrafts. Within them, droplets can grow large enough to fall as rain, but the cloud itself remains suspended as long as the updraft continues. Sometimes, when the air cools and the lift weakens, clouds begin to descend, not as a dramatic fall, but as a soft fade. They evaporate, dissolve. Their moisture gently returns to invisible vapor. In this way, clouds never crash to the ground. They simply change form, a slow, quiet farewell. And so they drift. Drift across mountaintops, valleys, oceans, and cities. Drift at the whim of the wind. Drift through seasons, from the frozen breath of winter to the shimmering haze of summer. This drifting is more than movement, it's story. Clouds carry the tale of the air that holds them, the temperature it rose from, the journey it took, the invisible dance between earth and sky. And from below, we get to witness it, to lie in a field and watch cumulus towers build and fade, to look through a window and see stratus layers roll like fog, to walk beneath cirrostratus veils stretched thin across the blue. They drift not because they must, but because they can. Because the atmosphere is a gentle cradle, a stage of unseen currents and quiet lift. So the next time you find yourself gazing upward, watching clouds glide across the sky, know that what you're seeing is a kind of balance, a quiet agreement between weight and wind, a promise that even heaviness can be held. In a world that often rushes, clouds remind us of patience, of letting go, of moving forward, slowly, softly, without falling. They do not hurry, they do not resist, they float, and perhaps, on some days, so can we. Sometimes, the sky writes its quietest poetry upon the surface of the earth. You might see it on a windless afternoon, or early in the morning before the day has found its rhythm, when a still lake becomes a mirror, and the clouds above seem to drift not only through the air, but upon the water itself. These reflections are more than just visual echoes. They're part of a larger dance between light, surface, and silence. A calm lake is like a lens turned upward. When its surface is undisturbed, it reflects the sky with remarkable clarity. Clouds appear in double, above and below, floating in quiet symmetry. Fluffy cumulus puffballs, delicate cirrus streaks, or soft stratus veils all find their likeness shimmering just beneath the surface. What makes this mirror possible is stillness. The smoother the water, the clearer the reflection. Even a gentle breeze can ripple the image, scattering light in tiny waves. But when the air is still and the lake is quiet, something magical occurs. A perfect, peaceful doubling of the sky. Cloud reflections are especially vivid during sunrise and sunset. At these times, the light moves at a slant, filtering through more of the atmosphere and painting clouds in hues of amber, lavender, and rose. When mirrored in a lake, these colors seem to stretch even farther, giving the illusion of a sky that continues downward, as though Earth has no bottom, only sky and more sky. This peaceful doubling softens perception. It invites contemplation, and it offers a rare kind of symmetry where the ground holds the sky and the sky leans down to meet it. From a scientific perspective, this happens because of the way water interacts with light. Water has a high reflectivity when viewed at shallow angles, like when looking across the surface rather than directly down into it. The angle of the sun, the purity of the water, and the presence or absence of wind all shape how much of the cloud is seen and how clearly it appears. And yet, for all the physics involved, the emotional experience is simpler, calmer. It is one of pause, of breath. Perhaps you've seen it yourself, standing at the edge of a quiet pond, watching clouds ripple across its surface, as if the sky itself were taking a bath. Or sitting by a mountain lake, where stillness is broken only by a dragonfly, or the quiet sip of a fish. In moments like these, time seems to slow. Cloud reflections remind us that not all beauty is found in movement. Sometimes, the most profound expressions of nature come in stillness, in quiet repetition, in the way the sky's story is whispered twice, once in the air and once in the water below. They also connect us to a long tradition of observation. Artists have painted them, poets have described them, hikers, campers, and wanderers have paused to take in their gentle wonder. And somewhere in the world right now, another set of eyes is finding them just as captivating. Clouds in water aren't just scenery, they are a moment held, a stillness honored, a reminder that beauty doesn't always call attention to itself. So next time you pass a lake on a quiet day, look closely. The sky may be looking back, and in its soft reflection, you may find your own calm mirrored too. High above the earth, far higher than even the tallest thundercloud or cirrus veil, there exists a kind of cloud so delicate, so ethereal, that it glows softly in the twilight sky. These are noctilucent clouds, whose name means night shining. And true to that name, they shimmer gently just after sunset or just before sunrise, glowing with silvery blue light in the dim edge of night. Noctilucent clouds live in the mesosphere, a region of the atmosphere nearly 50 miles above the ground. This is a realm of extreme cold, colder than anywhere else in the Earth's atmosphere. It is also incredibly dry. So, for a cloud to form there, the conditions must be just right. A little moisture, some floating particles like dust from meteors or volcanic ash, and very, very low temperatures. Unlike the more familiar clouds that form from water droplets or ice crystals in the troposphere, noctilucent clouds are made of tiny ice crystals that catch the last rays of sunlight after the sun has slipped below the horizon. From the ground, it looks as if the sky is whispering light. Soft filaments glowing against the darkening blue, too high to be lit by anything except the sun that has already set. They don't appear every night. In fact, they're quite rare. Most often seen in summer at high latitudes, places like Scandinavia, Canada, or parts of Russia. Noctilucent clouds are a treat for careful sky watchers. On those special evenings, when the air is clear and the sun has just dipped below the curve of the earth, you may see them shimmer into view, like quiet traces left behind by stars. They move slowly, gently, their patterns ripple and wave, like delicate silk stretched across the upper sky. Sometimes they form feathered shapes, other times latticed structures or softly glowing tendrils, always faint, always dreamlike. Because they are so high, they are often invisible to radar and weather. Balloons. Scientists track them using satellites and special twilight photography. Some believe they are becoming more common, perhaps due to subtle changes in the upper atmosphere. From a sleep-friendly perspective, there's something magical about noctilucent clouds. They are not loud displays of weather or dramatic harbingers of change. They're gentle phenomena, born from stillness and cold, appearing only when the sun is gone and the sky is quiet. Their appearance is not something we control. We cannot summon them or predict them with certainty, and that makes their glow even more precious. A reminder that not all beauty comes with an announcement. Some of it drifts softly into view, asking nothing of us but to notice. So, if you find yourself out on a summer evening, especially in the far latitudes, and the sky has darkened but not fully, take a moment to look up. Let your eyes adjust. Wait, and you may see them, those glowing veils of ice, suspended on the highest edge of our breathable world. They are the night clouds, whispering their glow across the top of the world. There's something quietly spellbinding about the way clouds embrace mountains. It's not a collision, it's a soft meeting, a slow dance of mist and stone. In meteorology, we call this orographic lift, when air is pushed upward as it encounters elevated terrain. But here, in this sleepy telling, let's simply imagine it as the sky's way of leaning in for a hug. As moist air approaches a mountain range, it rises. Not abruptly, but gradually, like breath deepening before sleep. And as it rises, the air begins to cool. Cooling causes condensation. Tiny droplets of water begin to form. That's how the cloud appears. Not with a flash, but with a slow unveiling. These clouds don't roar. They don't surge or swirl. They gather and drape, resting on ridgelines and curling around peaks as if they were placing a blanket on the shoulders of the earth. Often, they hold close to the contours, tracing every ridge, every slope, as though mapping the land in moisture. In some places, this creates what are called cap clouds, smooth layers that sit atop mountaintops, shaped like gentle hats or soft halos. Other times, the clouds spill over the range like foggy waterfalls, trailing into the valleys below. These are known as banner clouds, or flowing leeward mist. They move not with speed, but with grace, following the pull of air currents and the slow exhale of wind. From a distance, it looks as if the mountain is wearing the sky. Its summit disappears beneath a soft crown of vapor. The light shifts, shadows lengthen, and the landscape feels cloaked in mystery, but not a sharp or ominous mystery, a quiet one, the kind that asks you to slow down, to notice the breath of the earth. In early morning, this phenomenon can be especially gentle. The rising sun filters through the mist, casting peach and gold across the folds of cloud and hill. Trees emerge like silhouettes through the haze. Birdsong begins, and the air holds that damp, earthy scent that only comes when cloud and land meet. And in the evening, when the sun dips low behind the peaks, the clouds may linger, tinged with lavender and soft steel blue. They stretch, flatten, and sometimes seem to melt into the terrain itself. The mountains exhale, the sky listens. Some of the most iconic mountain ranges in the world, like the Andes, the Alps, or the Rockies, are no strangers to this ritual. But it happens in quieter hills too, in gentle uplands and coastal bluffs, any place where air must climb, and in climbing, it learns to release. These cloud formations aren't dangerous. They don't bring sudden storms or fierce winds. Instead, they are nature's slow caress, a result of the atmosphere responding to shape and height. A reminder that even the sky is affected by the land beneath it, that even air, invisible and vast, must rise and bend. To watch this is to feel a kind of peace. You don't need to name the process to appreciate its poetry. Just look. Let the clouds show you how they curve, how they settle, how they find their form not through force, but through following the shape of things. So the next time you find yourself near a hill or mountain, and the sky is moist and cool, pause for a while. Let the mist roll in. Watch how it curls around stone and forest. Feel the hush that arrives with it. It's the sky laying itself down, not with urgency, but with softness. A cloud's gentle greeting to the earth it passes over. Some clouds arrive not with thunder, but with hush, not with spectacle, but with subtlety. They don't draw attention to themselves. Instead, they weave into the sky like a whisper that asks nothing, promises nothing, but still changes the way the world feels. These are the clouds that sound like silence. Of course, clouds don't make sound in the way we often think. They don't have voices or songs or spoken words, but they shape the soundscape around them. When the sky is filled with a gentle overcast layer, or when low clouds drift slowly through a quiet valley, something shifts in the way we hear. The world softens. It begins with texture. Overcast days, those wrapped in stratus or stratocumulus layers, muffle the bright reflections and echoes of a sunny day. Sunlight, when direct, sharpens the edges of everything. But when diffused through cloud layers, light becomes subdued, like a lamp behind a frosted glass. And with that softened light, sound seems to settle too. Footsteps on damp grass become quieter. Birds call more gently. Distant sounds, traffic, voices, the rustle of trees feel hushed. The cloud cover above acts like a subtle acoustic ceiling, holding sound close to the earth. Like a blanket over a room, it dampens the high frequencies, leaving behind only the lower tones, the slow ones, the mellow ones. In fog, the effect is even more pronounced. Fog is simply a cloud touching the ground, and it carries moisture into every corner. That moisture absorbs sound, soaking it up like a sponge. The sharp edges of noise are smoothed. The world doesn't go silent. It just grows quieter, less urgent, more dreamlike. Clouds can also influence how we feel sound. On a cloudless night, sound travels farther. Crickets seem louder. A distant dog's bark carries for miles. But when the night is blanketed by low, moist clouds, sound becomes intimate. Nearby rustles feel closer. Distant ones vanish. We become more attuned to what's immediately around us. The small, soft sounds of our own breathing, of fabric shifting, of leaves brushing against one another. Some say silence has a tone, and under a sky brushed with cloud, it often does. It's not pure absence. It's presence without pressure. It's the gentle quiet that wraps around a slow afternoon, or the quiet that settles just before snow begins to fall. There's something meditative about this kind of cloud cover. You don't have to interpret it. You just feel it. It settles into the world like a pause between thoughts, like the space between waves, like the long breath out. Even the way clouds move can contribute to this sense of hush. Watch a high, pale layer drift across the sky, not rushing, not forming storms, just slowly migrating. You can almost feel time stretch. The clouds aren't in a hurry. They're part of a rhythm deeper than hours or minutes. They invite you to join it. And when clouds hide the sun near twilight, they can bring a quiet that's tinged with colour: mauve, grey, periwinkle. The horizon fades into softness. The light does not vanish. It recedes gently, trailing off like the last notes of a lullaby. These are the clouds that sound like silence, not in the absence of everything, but in the presence of calm. They don't speak, but they create space for listening. So tonight, if you find yourself beneath a quiet sky or wrapped in a gentle mist, let yourself notice the way the world has hushed. Listen to the soft sounds, the ones beneath the usual noise, the ones that feel like rest. Sometimes the most beautiful weather isn't the dramatic kind. It's the kind that makes room for silence. And silence, it turns out, is full of sky. The sky is not a single canvas, but a gallery of layers, each one painted with its own breath, its own softness, its own quiet rhythm. Clouds, too, are rarely alone. More often than not, they exist in company, stacked, scattered, drifting in loose gatherings that stretch from the Earth's lowest folds to the icy heights above. This layering is more than beautiful, it's deeply meaningful. Each level of the atmosphere holds its own mood, its own temperature, its own purpose. And the clouds that form there are shaped by those quiet conditions. Like pages in a skybound storybook, each one adds another tone to the tale. Close to the surface, we often find stratus and stratocumulus clouds. These are the lowest, the closest to our rooftops and tree canopies. They spread across the sky like mist stretched wide, grey, uniform, and softly draping. They're the clouds of overcast mornings and muffled afternoons. Sometimes they cradle rain. Other times they simply hold light in their quiet silver net. A little higher up, we begin to meet altocumulus, clouds that ripple and bunch like textured fabric, often arranged in rows or scattered across a mid-level sky. These clouds are gentle, but they hold signs of shifting air. Their presence can whisper of changes to come, though never urgently. They float halfway between here and the high cold, mediators between the Earth's warmth and the stratosphere's chill. Above even these, cirrus clouds drift. High and delicate, they're composed of ice crystals, trailing in thin streaks and brushstrokes. They appear fragile, like sky feathers, but they are reminders of wind patterns far above our heads. Where the air is thin and sharp, these clouds still find a way to paint. Sometimes, all three levels join the performance. A storm may build from low-level moisture, draw in mid-level warmth, and cap itself with high cirrus plumes. When viewed from afar, this layering is breathtaking, an entire symphony of vapor and wind, structured but never stiff. The layers do not clash, they blend, and in moments of quiet weather, you might see peaceful layering too. Imagine a sunset where low fog hugs the hills. A mid-level altocumulus deck catches gold and rose light, and high cirrus clouds stretch into lavender wisps. The sky becomes dimensional, more than surface, more than background. It becomes a space you could fall into. These layers interact, but gently. Warm air rising from the surface may slip through a low cloud, cooling as it climbs, and condense again higher up. A descending pocket of drier air may evaporate part of a cloud, leaving a faint break. The process is slow. Nothing in a layered sky moves in haste. Even change up there takes its time. Pilots know these layers well. Flying through them, they see what we from the ground only imagine. A low overcast might seem endless from a window, but rise above it, and you might find yourself in dazzling sun, with distant cirrus above, and the cotton floor of the stratus below. It's like passing through soft doors into entirely new rooms of the sky. And for those of us staying earthbound, the layering gives our sky dimension. It offers shade and depth. It creates mood. It reminds us that what we see above isn't flat or fixed. It's breathing, shifting, holding warmth and cold and silence all at once. So the next time you look up and see not one, but many textures, soft grey beneath white tufts, with pale threads higher still, you're seeing the sky's slow architecture. A stacking of breath, a layering of thought, layers upon layers of vapour, each with its own quiet voice, each with its own place in the peaceful weather above. At the heart of every cloud, every mist, every drop of gentle rain, there is a process both ancient and ongoing. It's called condensation, and it is one of the most delicate dances in the atmosphere. Though invisible to the eye until its final moments, condensation is how vapour becomes visible, how the unseen becomes soft form, how a cloud is born. It begins with warmth. As the sun heats the surface of the earth, moisture from oceans, lakes, soil, and leaves begins to lift. This vapour is invisible, silent, drifting upward with the rising air. It floats freely, weightless and scattered, searching for cooler altitudes where its transformation can begin. And then, as the air rises and expands, it cools. Not sharply, not abruptly, but gradually, with altitude. And when it reaches just the right temperature, when it becomes saturated with vapour, it begins to shift. Tiny droplets form, too small to fall, but just large enough to scatter light. These droplets cluster around microscopic particles in the air, dust, salt, pollen. They need something to hold on to, something to gather around. This moment is the dance's quiet beginning. What results is a cloud, or the ghost of one, a gentle fog, a veil of vapour turned visible. These droplets, held aloft by rising air, float together in a soft community, millions of them suspended like breath caught in the light. The beauty of condensation is that it's never truly still. It's always in motion, always in conversation with its surroundings. If the air continues to cool, the cloud thickens. More droplets join the dance. If the air warms or dries, some droplets evaporate again, fading back into invisibility. The process reverses, but gently, always gently. You can think of clouds as balancing acts. They form when rising air cools enough for vapour to condense. They remain when the upward lift is just strong enough to hold those droplets in place. And they dissipate when the balance shifts, when the warmth returns, or the moisture fades. It's like a tide, but in the air, a quiet rhythm of gathering and release. Even in a sky that seems still, this cycle is always happening. High above, cirrus clouds may be born from ice crystal condensation in the upper atmosphere. Lower down, puffy cumulus clouds swell with daytime heat, forming and fading with the sun's arc. And beneath them all, mist and fog dance just above the ground, turning back into vapour as morning light arrives. Sometimes, condensation becomes more. The droplets grow larger, heavier. They begin to fall, not abruptly, but as a hush of rain or snow or drizzle. Even this is gentle. The cloud gives back what it gathered, returning moisture to the earth below. But not all condensation leads to rain. In many clouds, the droplets remain too small, too scattered. They drift endlessly, part of a sky river that never quite reaches the sea. And that's the wonder of it. Condensation is not about endings. It's about movement, a perpetual turning of moisture into form, of breath into beauty. It's happening now, even as you listen. Somewhere above you, invisible vapor is cooling. Tiny droplets are forming, clustering, creating softness in the sky. A cloud may be gathering or fading. The dance continues. So, the next time you look up and see a cloud, no matter its shape or shade, you'll know what's inside. You'll know that within its quiet form, there is motion, a pulse, a process that has carried on for millions of years without need for noise or urgency. The endless dance of condensation, soft, rhythmic, timeless, a lullaby written in vapor, a sky that breathes. And as our cloud-bound journey drifts to a close, may the soft weight of the sky, the floating shapes above, and the quiet rhythms of condensation bring you peace tonight. Let the clouds you met, those slow pillows of vapor, those silver wisps, those low and quiet blankets, gather gently in your thoughts now. Let them drift across your inner sky, moving slowly, softly, without demand. They ask nothing from you, only that you rest. Perhaps, behind your eyelids, you'll glimpse a single cloud, silver-edged and slow turning, or a hush of fog rolling through a forest, or a night sky brushed with cirrus, glowing faintly in the moonlight. These are gentle thoughts, safe ones, carried on the breath of the atmosphere. And if these sleep-weather journeys have brought you comfort, you're welcome to like or subscribe, only if it feels peaceful to do so. It helps other quiet hearts find their way here too. But for now, there's nothing left to do. No weather to watch, no maps to read, no sounds but your own breath, rising and falling like the sky itself. Snuggle in, let yourself float. Good night. Calm skies to you.